Chapter 8:15. On the highest floor of the palace, in front of the silver metal door with the sun and moon printed on it. As the suzerain placed the left and right hands that carried the sun and moon on both sides of the door to the art corridor officially opened. Even standing at the door, one couldn't look directly at the art corridor. All one could see was a gray fluid. Han Dong muttered to himself as he looked at the scene in front of him. This is a spatial teleportation door? No, is it a kind of inner and outer membrane? As long as it was something related to space, Han Dong's void laboratory would definitely sense it. Staring at the gray fluid inside the door, the feeling of long-distance teleportation wasn't strong. It gave Han Dong the feeling that it was more like a spatial membrane. It was like an empty paper box. The hall, VIP rooms, banquet hall, and other areas in the palace were like the exterior of the empty paper box. Now, they were about to enter the inner layer of the paper box. It was easy to enter, but leaving would be a problem. However, regarding the empty paper box, Knight Charlie had mentioned the relevant inference yesterday. Some countermeasures and guidelines had been prepared in advance. Next, it was up to the leader, Han Dong, to make the next decision. Should they reject the suzerain's invitation with some reasons and delay the time to enter the art corridor as much as possible and find a way to contact the expeditionary army at the foot of the mountain? Or should they directly enter and face the suzerain's real conspiracy? Let's go. Han Dong was the first to step inside. His teammates followed one after another, passing through the gray membrane and stepping into the art corridor. As everyone entered, their auras completely disappeared from the palace. Under the suzerain's holy robe, the runes formed by the accumulation of countless rat eyes turned into crooked mouths that laughed wildly without restraint. It seemed that his plan was about to be realized. At the same time, at the banquet hall's side door, magic flute user Truman Zorro appeared with 3 perfect replicas. They corresponded to Wino, Demps, and Charlie. The 3's expressions, actions, and speech were no different from real people. Even the aura they exuded was the same. It was also possible to make the 3 of them use the relevant abilities. However, once the artistic energy in their bodies was exhausted, they couldn't maintain their human forms. A perfect disguise for a certain period of time could still be achieved. The suzerain intended to return the 3 replicas to the expeditionary army at the foot of the mountain to reach an agreement. However, there was a problem here. These perfect replicas did not include Han Dong. More precisely, the high-level painters in Perugia who worked directly under the Lord couldn't even draw out the basic image of Han Dong, so they couldn't even create a replica. In this way, he needed to fabricate a reason, saying that Han Dong violated the rules during the art festival and was imprisoned. However, such a flaw naturally had a high probability of being seen through. The suzerain stood on the platform on the second floor. An ethereal voice came from under his hood. Zorro, I'll leave this matter to you, at the very least. Don't let these inferior humans have any doubts in the early stages. Give them some preferential treatment so that more food can enter my city. The quality of these 4 people has already reached the standard I've set. As long as I could devour them, I would be able to get close to the thin film of mythical level. Subsequently, I would let more humans enter the city, which would further push me into the realm of mythical level. What's the big deal about a medium-sized title deed? I will become a legend here. Mad God will definitely be happy. Yes. Just as the emissary Zorro was about to lead the 3 replicas out, a strange aura spread out in the banquet hall. At this moment, time seemed to slow down or even stop. Everything was dyed gray between the gaps of the cloth, between the cracks of the walls, between the grooves of the candles. Gray tentacles drilled out in an extremely twisted form. The ground in the center of the banquet hall turned into a gray vortex. The marble dining table and the wool carpet laid on the ground all turned into the abyss. The magic flute emissary hurriedly brought the 3 replicas to the edge of the abyss. He had never seen such a scene before. The aura from the bottom of the abyss was stronger than the suzerain. It was not even on the same level. At this moment, the suzerain, who was standing on the platform on the 2nd floor, quickly floated down and knelt at the edge of the spiral abyss. He lowered his head and did not speak. Seeing this, the magic flute emissary Izoro hurriedly brought the 3 replicas to kneel down. To be able to directly cross time and space and appear in the central palace of Perugia without any warning. To be able to easily change the aura and space structure of the palace. To be able to make the great Perugia suzerain kneel down with fear and respect. There was only one existence in the magic flute emissary's mind. It was the real owner of Perugia city's land deed, the suzerain's biggest backer. An absolute high-ranking king-level existence. In the spiral abyss, a voice that could make a living being go crazy was heard. Only the descendants of the hybrid demons who had the blood of the mad god flowing in their bodies were not affected. The magic flute emissary and the suzerain were both descendants of this god, but they were still trembling under the influence of the voice. The tentacles in their bodies curled up into a ball. Even the suzerain painter could not understand why this existence would personally descend. Even if he died in battle here, even if the mid-sized land deed was occupied, to this existence, it was just a small matter. Why would such a great existence descend because of a small siege? The suzerain kneeling at the edge of the abyss could not find the answer. The crazy whisper echoed in the palace. It could not be rejected. Every word was imprinted on the surface of the brain. Interesting idea, however, this disguise is not enough to fool this group of humans. Let me add some spices to make this war more interesting. GAG in the spiral abyss. Tentacles with human faces quickly crawled out and quickly entered the bodies of the 3 replicas. Perfect the disguise, completely filling in all the flaws. Even if they were placed in front of the other captains to investigate, they would not be able to find any problems. At the same time, in the abyss, there was a perfect creation that was slowly floating out. Countless gray tentacles carried a special egg rising from the abyss. With this smooth egg as the head, fine tentacles grew out and weaved into a perfect human body. It was the appearance of Han Dong. This is the most perfect disguise. I'll leave the details to you, Ramstein. Go crazy as much as you want. When the words ended, the gray substance dissipated, the tentacles retreated, and the abyss disappeared. Everything returned to normal. Only the terrified messenger Zoro was left, as well as great overlord Ramstein, whose body was twitching from excitement. Chapter 8:16. Speaking of them world rules. Han Dong dared to say that there were no more than 10 people in the entire holy city who knew this huge rule better than him. Moreover, Han Dong was an individual who was absolutely included in this rule and enjoyed priority. After all, Han Dong had the identity of a double emissary outside the city. The reason why he stepped into the art gallery was because of the rules. From the first negotiation between the expeditionary army and the emissary of Perugia until now, all actions were restricted by the world rules. If anyone dared to violate this rule, Han Dong had the right to directly apply for help from the old king behind him, or even directly put him on trial. First, let's talk about this important world rules. 4 years ago, Han Dong used the name of Huang Yin to win the title deed of Stuart Manor. When his name was written in the agent column, a huge amount of world rules analysis information like Tsihai was forced into Han Dong's brain like liquid. At that time, it mainly involved rules related to lords and land deeds such as land deed war, land deed scale and personnel limit, and small land deed lords' authority to execute. At the same time, it also roughly explained the outline of the world rules, a chaotic world that seemed to be occupied by indescribable things. In fact, there were layers of complete rules that were connected by dots and lines, which made Han Dong, who knew it for the first time, extremely shocked. Some details in the world rules were even more perfect than the laws created by human civilization. Han Dong also successfully used the land deed war in the world rules to openly and fairly challenge the Scarlet Count to win the important mobile land deed. The world rules were mainly used to restrict the intervention of levels, rationalize war, rationalize the meaning of life, and allow everything to develop in accordance with the laws of the growth of the universe. A king-level existence was fatal to any civilization, but the universe itself allowed the existence and development of any civilization. If king level was allowed to participate in any small war, the earth would fall apart in a short period of time. All lives below king level were just ants that could die at any time. No civilization could develop, and the old kings who were constantly fighting among themselves would fall one after another. Therefore, king level or some mythical beings, their actions were restricted. If a regent wanted to intervene in a war that was lower than their level, they would have to fulfill a large number of prerequisites. For example, when it involved his own interests, the pious call of his direct subordinates, or the consumption of a certain amount of wealth. Even if all the above conditions were met and he descended, his body would still be suppressed. This was similar to the Old King incident that had happened in Stuart Manor. The arrival of M.O. carried a lot of coincidences and opportunities, but at the same time it was also limited. This was also why she was stopped by the returning Grim Reaper in the end. Considering the comprehensive combat power of the Holy City, she did not continue to attack. The world rule that conformed to the evolution of life was acknowledged by all the old kings. Such a rule was also beneficial to the development of all living beings. Through endless wars, including land contract wars of various scales, equivalent wars between different species, and even equivalent wars between different planets, more kings could be born. Speed up the increase of entropy of the entire universe. Many of the things in the above rules were still beyond Han Dong's reach. As Han Dong's level as a lord continued to increase, he would also obtain more information about the world rule. It was precisely because of the investigation missions and small and medium-sized expeditions that humans had discerned and confirmed the existence of the world rule, that they proposed the great plan of the Great Expedition. Otherwise, if they attacked the hybrid demon city in such a mighty manner, a few old kings would be able to encircle and annihilate the expeditionary army. At present, the expeditionary army was concentrated at the foot of the mountain of Perugia. As long as Han Dong and the others returned, they would sign the siege book with the hybrid demon lord of this city, a war treaty that conformed to the world rule. The most important point was that the military force sent by the besiegers could only be equal to or less than that of the defenders. This was also why the expeditionary army could not directly send one commander and 4 generals to directly flatten Perugia. Instead, they needed to organize a siege force. As for how much military force both sides had, it was not up to the two sides to decide. When signing the siege book, the world rule would show the corresponding value of the military force of both sides on the paper. After the siege index was less than or equal to the defense index, they would continue to sign some more important treaties. As long as the siege was launched under the premise of the world rule, those forces that stood outside the siege book would not be able to participate. If they wanted to forcefully interfere, they would be punished by the higher-ups. Even the old king behind Perugia was restricted and could not personally participate in the battle. Even if the old king temporarily descended and did not do anything directly related to the war, he still had to pay a certain price for interfering in low-level affairs. This was also why Lord Perugia was very confused about the descent. The Lord's self-awareness was very good. He knew very well that this existence on the same level as the universe would not bother to descend for him. Perhaps the old king was suddenly interested and wanted to see how much power the ant-like humans had accumulated after hundreds of years of hiding, or perhaps he had descended for other reasons. What was it? Back to Handong. Art Corridor, as expected. This is the space passage that leads to the inner city of Perugia. Thank you for your trust, Senior Charlie. Next, we may need to borrow your powerful strength. We need to disintegrate the basic structure of this city from the inside. With the help of the siege troops fighting outside, we will definitely be able to take down this city with the least cost. Charlie's expression was very calm. As I said, I owe you a favor. You can use it however you want. Okay. Han Dong and the others were in a twisted corridor filled with gray matter. The paintings and sculptures placed on both sides of the corridor were in a distorted and lively state. The blasphemous sound of the rats became louder and louder in their ears, creating a strong mental disturbance every second. In such an environment, ordinary knights would quickly lose their human form and turn into flesh-like works of art, becoming a member of the art corridor. At this moment, Han Dong plucked a red fruit from the talent tree. While eating it, he smeared the juice on his face. The black vortex on the surface of his torso began to slowly rotate. No longer suppressed, no longer restrained. The crazy laughter that originated from his nature came from Han Dong. Not only his mouth was making sounds, but the black vortex torso, that perfectly fit the brain, was also making sounds. The crazy laughter instantly overwhelmed the total blasphemous sound in the art corridor. When the crazy laughter overshadowed the rats' cries, on the surface of these vivid works of art, one could see distorted faces of horror. And as the intensity of the crazy laughter increased, gray tentacles with spots began to appear on the surface of various works of art. Reverse pollution. Ha 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 ha. Ah ha ha ha. Han Dong's laughter echoed in the corridor for a long time, until all the works of art turned into a pool of thick water without any signs of life. Even Knight Charlie's face was full of shock. This was the perfect crazy laughter that Han Dong spent countless efforts to obtain. Coupled with the faceless head, it was almost unbreakable on the spiritual level. The laughter gradually suppressed back into the body. He wiped away the saliva stuck to the corner of his mouth. Han Dong raised his finger to the end of the corridor. Let's go. Chapter 8:17. Creak. When they passed through the metal door at the end of the art corridor, it was as if they had come from the outside to the inner layer of the box. The four-man team that had originally participated in the art festival had officially arrived at the inner city, which was the true Perugia city. The hybrid demons were obsessed with human civilization. They had preserved the appearance of the original city and a large number of paintings left behind by the original humans. They had the mentality of an equal exchange with humans with artistic attainment. Everything was just a disguise. It was just a disguise, used by the Lord to pursue the truth. The attainments of humans on the level of art could indeed help this atavistic body of the spirit attribute better understand the truth. However, there was no need to be obsessed with it, and there was no need to completely use art to break through. The Lord of Perugia was just using this as an excuse to wantonly publicize that the art left behind by humans could help them cultivate on the brain and spirit level. He even used himself as an example. This attracted the spirit attribute hybrid demons of other forces to come to Perugia city from thousands of miles away. With the excuse of discussing art, he dragged them into the abyss. By devouring the heads of these spirit attribute hybrid demons, he helped the Lord to touch the truth and get closer to the myth. The true Perugia city was also known as the Mad Rat City. It was a depraved city that was even more depraved and had no bottom line than the other cities managed by the hybrid demons. The Lord of Perugia city relied on the ability of the painter under his command and the support of the medium-sized land deed. He drew a skin on the surface of the city, a skin that preserved the original human civilization of the ancient city. He used it to cover up this dirty and filthy, mad rat city. There was only a skin between the outer layer and the inner layer. This was also the reason why Night Charlie felt strange when he walked between the cities. He didn't see any rats, but he could hear the squeaking of rats. He was walking in the clean and tidy palace, but his body was covered in rat eggs. Disguise. A city that was good at disguise. In this aspect, he was somewhat similar to Han Dong. Some high-rank knights with excellent spirit power would have a similar feeling when they put their arms around Han Dong's shoulder. It was as if they were walking with a braised egg monster. Is this the true face of this city? Outside the door was still the banquet hall. However, it was a real banquet hall with its disguise removed. The base of the lamp was a skull that was crawling with centipedes. On top of it was a gray rotten oil candle. The design of the marble dining table was also unique. There was a circular opening on the table for each diner, which was just enough to hold the head of a living being. The real food came from the mantis demons at the bottom of Perugia. They were captured alive and brought here. After fixing their heads with the screws, they were poured with fragrant rat broth. This was how the Lord entertained his guests. Seeing the depraved scene in front of them, everyone just looked a bit gloomy. As knights who were born in the post-apocalyptic world, they had seen all kinds of scenes and were naturally mentally prepared before the great expedition. At this moment, Han Dong had already spread out his senses and sensed that something with an unusual stench was approaching the banquet hall. Fully armed, something's coming. Sizzle! Along with the rise of steam, the power armor was immediately equipped. There was no need to introduce Han Dong's holy mantle armor. Dempsey's auxiliary light armor could effectively assist him in the rapid and energy-saving demonization. It was perfectly attached to his body. As for Night Charlie's armor, it was also a light armor, and the design was particularly simple. The external appearance was a light gauntlet. The material was metal scales the size of a fingernail. The gauntlet was hand-woven. The finger part was made with the most advanced sewing technology of the Steam Knights and the puppet thread provided by Charlie himself. It could effectively assist Charlie in controlling the puppet and increase the speed of control. It could even allow some armor scales to be transmitted to the puppet through the thread. The three of them were all auxiliary light armor. Only Wino Celeste was different, the sound of gears rotating, the sound of springs compressing, and the sound of metal colliding. When Wino was equipped with the unique power armor, a rich golden holy light spread in the banquet hall, and the filthy atmosphere was strongly dispelled. In the blink of an eye, Han Dong saw a pair of angel wings on the back of the armor, and a halo on the top of the helmet. Upon closer inspection, it was white steam overflowing from the armor. Medium, full metal armor, the inner layer was made of a kind of unicorn leather, taken from the Destiny realm, that could be attached to Wino's body. It was flexible and breathable. With the inner layer of leather as the base, the outer layer of metal armor was made of holy metal that had been directly blessed by the Pope. It involved a lot of handicrafts and used thousands of precise clockwork structures to ensure the adaptability of the armor. While the armor was made bigger, it did not affect any of Wino's activities. The helmet was designed to be a semi-wrapping type that covered the eyes and ears to isolate pollution. The double-layered shoulder armor that was at the same height as the face was printed with the marks of the Holy Knights and the combat nuns. At the same time, the long golden wavy hair was draped over the shoulder armor. Sister Wino, this armor of yours. This is the power armor specially provided by the royal family. In addition, I have the special identity of a combat nun. Royal Edition Nun Battle Armor. Boom! At the same time, the side door of the banquet hall was knocked open. The group of chefs with pig masks stitched on their faces and a body size of more than 2 meters came here. They were either carrying butcher knives, or had drills on their tentacles, or had huge mouths on their stomachs. Humph! The sound of pigs kept coming out from their nostrils. Their daily duty was to go to the bottom of the mountain and catch a mature brain demon for the guests to eat. Now, they needed to catch Han Dong and the others alive and make them into brain pudding for the Lord to enjoy. Go! The battle was about to start. There was no need for division of duties. The four of them immediately found their positions. King's blessing, after Wino cast divine blessing on everyone, she was the first to rush forward. Sizzle! When the power armor was driven by steam, a large amount of steam was ejected from the mini pipes on the back, which actually formed a shape similar to angel wings. Push charge. Together with the heavy light shield on her left arm, she directly knocked a huge pig butcher into the wall. Holy flames accumulated. Judgment, the combat nun's attributes were absolute counters to the hybrid demons. When the flail was swung down, the pig butcher that was smashed into pieces was annihilated in the holy flames. There was no possibility of regeneration. Chapter 8:18. The prerequisite for new recruits to join the Holy Knights was to have the holy attribute. The knights were divided into several different departments according to the usage of the holy attribute. They were generally divided into two categories. Support, provide holy light healing and purification. This was the most common group in the Holy Knight. These people also had the opportunity to go to the Holy See for training. Attack. Some were holy mages who specialized in releasing holy spells. Some were melee fighters who could condense the power of holy light on their weapons. Some people would have doubts. Weren't the attack type Holy Knights combat nuns? That was not the case. The special term, combat nuns, appeared about 30 years ago. It was a special term proposed by the Pope according to the Great Expedition Plan. Female abstinence and a Holy See training were the basic elements of combat nuns. According to the analysis of big data, females were much better at controlling the holy light than males. At the same time, they could better curb their desires. There was a more complete nun system to supervise them. Through the method of abstinence, they could improve the individual's affinity and understanding of the holy light. During the preliminary screening, the nun's affinity with the holy light was at least 50% higher than the average person of the same level. At the same time, they also needed to have top-notch combat talent. This talent would be reviewed by the cardinal and instructor in the Holy See through battle. After extremely strict training and layers of screening, the combat nuns who specialized in fighting the hybrid demons could be obtained. To a certain extent, they had already left the Holy Knights and were directly under the Holy See. They were leaning towards the Holy See's personal guards. Perugia City. One by one, the white butchers were burned to ashes by the holy flame. Since entering the city, Knight Wino, who had been under Han Dong's spiritual protection and did not play any role during the infiltration, burst out the strong characteristics of the combat nuns. At this moment, absolutely restraining the hybrid demons. This group of low-level hybrid demons piled up by flesh did not have any chance to regenerate. Sister Wino, there is something. Even Knight Charlie gave a high evaluation. All-round knights. Their defense level is comparable to the Lion Heart Knights of the same level. Their lethality against the hybrid demons is also top-notch. If such an organization is allowed to develop, the Lion Heart Knights will probably be replaced. The Holy See's ambition is quite big. Just like that, Wino charged in front, cut through the thorns, and killed her way out of the palace. Creak, Wino was about to rush out of the thick door on the first floor of the palace. Han Dong, who was right behind him, grabbed him by the arm. It wasn't that there was any danger outside, but that the street outside had turned into a giant hole, and the shape of Perugia had changed. This is Abyss? The open streets of the mountaintop area no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by a round mouth of the abyss with a diameter of 2,000 meters. It was similar to the structure of a volcano, and the mouth of the volcano was the entrance to the abyss. The gate of the palace was connected to a flight of stairs embedded in the wall of the abyss, leading to the deepest part of the abyss. Just by standing there, one could hear the squeaks of tens of millions of rats coming from the bottom of the abyss. It was obvious that the real Lord Perugia resided in the deepest part of the abyss, the rat nest. When he stared at the abyss, he could still feel the feeling of raw flesh being devoured that Scarlet Count had once described. All the rats that occupied Perugia City were somehow related to this overlord. Under the guise of art, they attracted guests who were quite accomplished in the spiritual aspect. They used a disguised ancient city to receive them, and through spiritual invasion, they let the rats eat their artistic brains, and then gave the collected brain essence to this overlord. Through the method of devouring, they could improve themselves and reach the mythical level. This was the true secret of Perugia City. A fallen city that was extremely dirty even in the hybrid demon world. Let's go. There might be dozens of hybrid demons in the Abyss Rat Nest, and there might even be a few mature hybrid demons. I'll have to trouble Knight Charlie to maintain the balance. Charlie didn't mind. He was different from the other knights. He could fight one-on-one or many at once. But I need to confirm one more time. Do you really plan to face the atavistic body head-on? Han Dong's eyes were unusually determined as he answered with certainty, "Spiritual aspect is my strength, especially when it comes to dealing with hybrid demons. The atavistic body in Perugia City mainly focuses on spiritual aspect, and it's perfectly countered by me. Also, some of the crows I set at the foot of the mountain also felt the ripples of battle. The siege troops have already gone up the mountain. The timing should be right." At this moment, Charlie suddenly placed his palm on Han Dong's shoulder and said solemnly, "Nicholas, Commander Hugo values you quite a lot. Actually, I have a good impression of you too. The atmosphere in the Secret Word Nights isn't good, but your arrival has slightly changed this oppressive atmosphere. The atavistic body is worlds apart from you hybrid demons. Don't die here." Han Dong stretched out his hand and gestured the number 3. "Senior Charlie, don't worry. Even if I can't win, I still have 3 escape routes to choose from. Besides, I'm not alone. Demps is also very powerful." At the mention of Demps, Charlie couldn't help but look at his finger and nod in agreement. After a short rest, the team followed Han Dong's instructions and went deep into the Overlord's rat nest. As they walked down the stairs, Han Dong reached out to touch his head several times. It wasn't that the rat's cries made him frustrated, but that his head seemed to be resonating with something in the abyss. At the same time, as they went deeper into the abyss of the rat nest, the mark of the old king on the back of Han Dong's left and right hands were also suppressed and weakened. Inadvertently, a tentacle drilled out from his ear hole. It could be seen that Han Dong's head was in a rather active state. At this moment, a soft and suitable finger brushed across Han Dong's back, and the resonance immediately weakened. Tilting his head, he saw little brother Dempus with a beaming face. "Nicholas, the sensing I mentioned earlier is here, isn't it? This city is very well disguised, just like your disguise. If you can kill the atavistic body before the siege troops arrive, it will be very useful. It should be of great help to you." Han Dong sent a voice transmission softly. "You planned this from the beginning? The information provided by Mother and my deduction can't be wrong. You're a rather special existence outside the city. If we can establish a connection in advance, we can survive even if the expedition fails." Han Dong just smiled and didn't say anything else. The team followed the dangerous path of the abyss and arrived at the rat nest, which was camouflaged in the deepest part of the abyss. It was a city ruin made of leftover biological remains, artistic waste, and all kinds of excrement. The overlord of Perugia was pursuing the truth in the deepest part of this place. Chapter 8:19. Just as Han Dong and the others stepped into the rat's nest, the fake, personally made by the old king, had been sent back to the expeditionary force by the magic flute messenger. Even the eye of the expedition, that gathered dozens of spiritual knights couldn't find any clues. The fake came to the Demon King's hall and directly reported the results of their investigation of Perugia to the Demon King's captain, describing the details of the outer city. Let the siege forces focus on the outer city as much as possible. Since Han Dong and the others returned safely and brought back information about the city, the expeditionary forces' first siege officially sounded. The Demon King personally signed the siege book. All the members of the siege army would leave their blood imprints on the siege book, and in this way, they would sign in to the war. According to the initial agreement, the Lord of Perugia also made some concessions to ensure that all streets were completely open during the siege. Finally, the military index of both sides was verified through the world rules. When it was determined that the siege forces were less than or equal to the defending hybrid demons, the siege book was established. If people who had nothing to do with the siege book intervened in this battle, they would be punished by the higher-ups, except for Han Dong and the others who were already in Perugia and recognized by the Lord. That was it. With the Knights of Misfortune, 3rd Captain Arthur demonized, as the commander, the expeditionary forces' first battle sounded in Perugia. The humans who had accumulated power for hundreds of years, equipped with power armors that matched their personalities, forced their way into Perugia. Swords and guns, magic and technology. The knights' various missions and skills honed for many years in the Destiny realm were all used on the hybrid demons entrenched in the streets of the city. The first large-scale conflict broke out in the mountainside area and ended with Arthur killing the butterfly rat artists entrenched in the depths of the street. However, the siege forces also suffered losses. Although the selected siege troops all had excellent resistance on the spiritual level, they were still very weak. There were still 11 knights who had problems. The knights' eyes flashed with panic, and they would murmur that their bodies were full of rats, and at the same time, they were gnawing on their brains. Commander Arthur handed this group of knights over to the support troops for spiritual purification. Considering the current momentum, the siege forces didn't stop at all and continued to head to the top of the mountain. Under the power of endless energy, the siege efficiency was higher than expected. However, some of the knights in the army smelled a weird aura in the streets and alleys of the ancient city. The demonic creatures and even the mantis demons that they killed were behaving strangely. They didn't seem like they were fighting a war. When the siege began, a large portion of the hybrid demons were not prepared at all. They were still on the streets or completing their works of art in their homes. His attitude towards battle was rather passive. Compared to battle, he was more inclined to present his work to the expeditionary army. A few of the mantis demons were even more obvious. Even when their heads were chopped off, they still had strange smiles on their faces. Long tongues protruded from their mouths as they used their last bit of life force to mutter, "You're right. Please enjoy my work." These murmurs carried with them the cries of rats, and they would often appear in his mind. At the same time, he would also recall the drawings of the hybrid demons. For now it was just simple sounds and images. There was neither mental pressure nor pollution. If this were to continue for a long time, who knew what would happen in the inner layer, in the depths of the rat nest ruins? Innumerable rats with brains crawled here. They're either individual entities, or a whole entity, or a living organ of an entity, or an external manifestation of the Overlord. Accompanied by the sound of a flute, the Overlord's trusted follower, the magical flute envoy Truman Zorro, arrived. Overlord, the human siege army has broken through the streets of the middle layer in a short period of time. Even the butterfly rats that were hiding were killed. It seems that the World Rule's estimation of their strength is a little too low. Perhaps the technology that these humans control is not included in the rules. The armor on their bodies is a great threat to us. If this continues, they will break into the main street at the top of the mountain one day earlier than expected. It will interfere with the Overlord's feeding plan. An ethereal sound was emitted from the mouths of these rats. The world rule's estimation can't be wrong. The faster they go in the early stages, the slower they will go in the later stages. Squeak, squeak. The armor on their bodies can help them kill our people quickly. It can also help them get infected with the plague. Don't worry, when they get close to the top of the mountain, they will naturally slow down. I have set up all the works of art on the main street. When the time comes, there will be experts with rat brains to show them to the siege army one by one. Those rats, buried in their brains in advance, will completely explode at that moment. Isn't this also a kind of screening? Those humans who can resist and survive will have a rather noble artistic brain. When the time comes, they will become the perfect food for me to touch the mythical realm. I can't wait to eat their brains. Squeak, yes, I will sacrifice everything to pave the road to the mythical realm for the Overlord. At this moment, the rats crawling on the ground became slightly impatient. A voice in the form of a command came from their mouths. However, the 4 fellows who came to the inner city are outside of my original plan. They are completely unaffected by any form of mental corruption. I originally planned to swallow the brains of these 4 high-level humans in advance to increase my strength to deal with the human siege army. Now, these 4 people have become a little troublesome. Zoro, there is something I need your help with. Overlord, please give your orders. These 4 fellows are going deep into my territory. I need you to use all means to delay one of them. After saying that, the rats crawling here used their tails and tongues to connect with each other. They formed a portrait on the ground, a Knight Charlie. Envoy Zoro stared at the portrait and could not help but mutter, "This person is very dangerous." As a mature hybrid demon, Envoy Magic Flute had already noticed the difference in Charlie. It was not just the difference in level. There was a strange aura emitting from Charlie's body. It was a dangerous aura that could make the hybrid demons tremble. That is why I need you to delay him for a while. After I swallow the other 3, I will deal with this special human knight alone. For this, I will grant you the control of the rat nest. After saying that, a rat the size of an arm with a black brain directly entered Envoy Magic Flute's body and granted him control. In an instant, the strength of this envoy's aura was higher than Scarlet Count. Chapter 820. Rat Nest Ruins. Walking in such a chaotic and stinky pile of ruins, Wino's holy light was also suppressed to a certain extent. The word chaotic was vividly reflected in the ruins. The dilapidated ancient building stone, cloth, and metal were mixed together in a twisted way, and there were wrinkled circuits similar to sulci on the surface. The most uncomfortable thing was the rat eggs. They were in the form of piles, embedded in the surface of the building, or piled up in the corner. In Han Dong's knowledge system, the reproduction method of rats was viviparous. But the rats here were reproducing on a large scale by laying eggs. Maybe Eternal Night changed their reproduction method, or maybe they were just chaotic life forms that existed in the form of rat. The basic knowledge of life had long been completely disrupted here. The densely packed eggs were rotating between the buildings and the streets, and could even crawl slowly like a snail. There were huge black dots on the milky white film, like dense eyeballs staring at Han Dong and the others. The eggs would hatch irregularly. The baby rats that came out would grow to adult size in a short period of time, and they would be extremely aggressive. If they were killed by a non-destructive attack, this kind of rat would also explode, which would cause a moderate degree of pollution to the people nearby, and at the same time, a large number of rat eggs would be blown out from the rat's body. Therefore, when dealing with these rats, they must ensure that the self-explosion could be suppressed. Otherwise, there would be an endless stream of rats. Even if the effect of each self-explosion was small, the number of rats would be enough to kill the whole team. At this time, Wino, who led the charge, was still the first to stand out. She was assigned the second layer of the talent tree, called Sacred Fire of Olympus. talent effect. Fire affinity +1, sacred affinity +1. At the same time, it increases the fusion rate of fire and sacred attributes, allowing the individual to attach the sacred fire to any physical item or external ability related to oneself. Because of the support of this talent, Wino was able to use a sacred flame domain that was exclusive to her. The original sacred light domain was covered with the burning characteristic of the sacred fire. It could cause the sacred fire to burn all hostile life forms close to it. Range of effect: 5 meters. Any rat that was close to this area, due to the effects of the strong flames and elemental suppression, it would be burned to ashes within a second, and self-destruct would be impossible. It was similar to an expedition team moving through the forest at night, using Wino Celeste as the torch to chase away all the wild beasts that were waiting to prey on them. In addition, Han Dong's laughter could prevent the entire team from being polluted by the rodent's squeaks. Just like that, the team walked along the streets for about half an hour. Other than these low-level rats, they didn't see any other hybrid demons. Strange. Where did the big thing in the rat's nest go? With doubts in mind, the group continued to go deeper into the rat's nest's main street. The originally chaotic and unruly street slowly became orderly. A special road sign appeared at the fork in the road ahead. Left House of Rat Brains. At the end of the street, there was a pitch-black building called Brain Structure. Just by looking at it, one could feel the strong roar of rat. Right, a source of madness. There was a huge garbage dump at the end of the street. All kinds of dirty garbage from Perugia were piled up in the garbage dump like pillars. Each pile of garbage was more than 200 meters high. As for what was hidden in the depths of the garbage dump, no one knew. Both areas had a special characteristic, which was that they were covered in sticky gray matter. Once set foot in it, one would continue to go deeper into the box within a box, and wouldn't be able to easily escape. If he chose the wrong area, Han Dong would miss the opportunity to meet the Lord directly, and his plan would be disrupted. Therefore, he had to make the right choice here. Let me try to spy on it. Everyone, wait a moment. Just as Han Dong was trying to spy on it with the demonic eye of Limit Buzz, the void laboratory in his mind trembled slightly. Han Dong sensed that a spatial fluctuation was about to descend. As a lord, Han Dong was very familiar with this kind of fluctuation. He could also use the title deed to trigger a small-scale spatial shift in his manner. Title deed interference. Originally, he wanted to remind the team members to be careful, but a light flashed in his mind at this moment. Han Dong deliberately didn't remind the team members. About 3 seconds later, the thick gray matter suddenly descended and covered Charlie's entire body. As a result, Charlie was naturally teleported away. The sound of the door closing came from the rat brain house on the left side of the fork. At the same time, the huge rat brain house sank into the ground and disappeared along with the entire left side of the road. This was the power of the medium title deed. The holder could modify the territory within a limited range. Of course, there was also a limit. Such a huge modification would require a very long cooldown time. Charlie. Wino was also shocked. In her opinion, Charlie was the only one in the team who could fight the atavistic hybrid demon head-on. However, Han Dong calmly pointed at the garbage dump on the right side. Sister Wino, let's go. Senior Charlie won't be in any danger. Aren't we going to look for him? Han Dong smiled at this moment, as if everything was going according to his plan. There's no need to look for him, and it's hard for us to find him. The Lord here used the title deed to bring Charlie deeper. Now is our best chance. Wino was confused. What chance? Sister Wino, you should have noticed that this is the rat nest, the main camp of the Lord. Some powerful hybrid demons who are favored by the Lord should be staying here. However, we didn't see anything along the way. What does this mean? The Lord gathered this group of forces by his side and prepared to deal with us together? No. It means that the Lord is afraid of one of us, Senior Charlie. The left and right streets here should also be temporarily created. The purpose is to make us stop because of the choice, so that we can separate Senior Charlie from the team. The Lord gathered all the hybrid demons in the rat nest in the rat brain house to deal with Senior Charlie. Thus, he has the opportunity to deal with the three of us alone. Then shouldn't we go look for Senior Charlie? Han Dong shook his finger. No. Think about it this way. The external forces of Perugia City are in direct conflict with the siege troop. The internal forces are all used to deal with Night Charlie. Then, the Lord here is in a state of isolation and helplessness. This is the best chance I mentioned. The logic is like this. Don't tell me you're planning to face the Lord of this city with just the three of us? That's the atavistic hybrid demon. Yes, just the three of us. Then, Han Dong stretched out his arm and put it on Demp's shoulder. The two of them smiled as if they were already prepared. Chapter 8:21. The above conversation was completed through a type of magical voice transmission. Sister Wino, next we need to pretend to be nervous because we can't find Night Charlie and gradually go deeper into the junkyard. We need to make this Lord think that everything is under his control as much as possible and find an opportunity to steal something from him. After all, according to Demps and my estimation, the Lord is definitely not someone who has just achieved the atavistic body. Instead, it has been a while. Since you know, are you still confident? Looking at the whole world, who can be confident in such a post-apocalyptic world? Even Captain Malone or Captain Alex didn't have absolute confidence when they were outside the city. As long as you have the necessary conditions and confidence, you'll be done. In an instant, Wino felt an extremely dangerous aura from Han Dong's body. It was completely inconsistent with the Grade 2 Knight in her knowledge. Remember, try to act as much as possible in the early stage. If you can steal something, it will increase your chances of winning. We will meet this Lord soon after we enter the junkyard. After all, Night Charlie is a nail in the Lord's eyes. He needs to eat us first and then deal with Charlie alone. Oh, okay. When the mental communication ended, Han Dong immediately entered a state of acting. The team immediately fell into an anxious state of losing their core combat power and launched a fierce discussion about the current predicament. Even more, Han Dong became more and more excited, causing his face to turn red. Drops of sweat kept dripping from his forehead. After some discussion, the team was changed into a more stable, triangular formation. They slowly moved toward the edge of madness, which was the junkyard, with a 50% reduction in movement speed. During the operation, Han Dong would reach out to wipe the sweat on his forehead from time to time. He looked quite nervous. This scene was seen by the mouse. However, the sweat was produced by Han Dong through self-regulating his body temperature. Coupled with his facial expression that was sometimes relaxed and sometimes tense, this kind of tension was completely revealed, but it was not out of place. Han Dong's performance made the three of them look like three pieces of living meat that were about to enter the mouse's stomach. Once again, they passed through the gray matter field and entered the box within a box. The Lord of Perugia used the medium land deed to divide the city vertically into 3 layers. The deepest region was where its main body was located. It had to ensure that the outsiders who came here had suffered enough mental invasion and physical exhaustion in the first 2 floors. It was as if the food had been processed and delivered to it. Garbage column, the 100-meter-tall garbage pillar, was like a giant tree in the forest, greatly obstructing everyone's vision. There were also strange rats crawling between the garbage pillars. The brains of these rats are outside of their bodies, and some of them even cover their entire bodies. They can also be called brain rats. The blasphemous sounds that come out of their mouths are stronger than works of art. Gray tentacles grew between their brains. Compared to the tentacles derived from the faceless one's head, the gray tentacles were only slightly different in size. They walked less than 100 meters between the dumpster. Han Dong could not help but cover the side of his head. A strong resonance swept through his head, and his brain buzzed like a train. At the same time, Han Dong immediately used his other hand to hug Wino's head. This was because the current scene was enough to instantly pull Wino into madness. Rat nest center, millions of brain rats were piled up and connected here. The brain tissue that grew on the surface of their bodies was connected to each other, fixing them into a 100-meter-large depraved brain. Crack at this time, a crack appeared at the top of the brain, accompanied by the swaying of gray tentacles, the Lord of Perugia. The atavistic hybrid demon known as the Mad Rat, Ramstein Merlin Mwazik, slowly appeared. It was still the same four-armed, four-legged hybrid demon from the banquet, with the sun and moon hanging between his palms, like a bird in a cage. Under the holy robe, the ancient runes formed by the eyes of the rats were flickering. Mad Rat Feast. A kind of physical mental attack forcibly squeezed into the heads of the three people. The Lord did not want to delay at all. He only wanted to quickly eat the three appetizers. After increasing his strength to a certain extent, he immediately went to deal with the unique main dish, O Night Charlie. At this time, the black vortex rotated. Han Dong actually absorbed the Mad Rat Feast that was acting on his teammates' heads into his own body and chose to bear it alone. The 3 times burden directly caused him to kneel on the ground and unable to get up. Streams of gray fluid mixed with rat hair flowed out from his ears. A sarcastic voice came from the Lord's body. "Is this what you call the spirit of a night? What's the point? Your companions will still be eaten in a few minutes. However, I have to say that you have already done very well. 4 nights of your level to be able to persist until here, it is already a miracle." What's going on? The Lord's tone changed. The Mad Rat Feast, that was 3 times the amount actually worked on Han Dong's head, and Han Dong was indeed kneeling in front of him, his whole body faintly twitching. However, the Lord did not absorb the essence of the brain. It was like the straw could not be inserted into the lid of the pearl milk tea cup at all, and it felt like he was just sucking air. What was going on? Just as the Lord was about to realize the problem, just as the Lord focused all his attention on Han Dong, an inconspicuous young man in the team suddenly moved. Only a flash of white lightning could be seen with the naked eye. At the same time, some seawater remained on Lord Perugia's holy robe. The Lord's head with curved horns turned 180 degrees, and hundreds of rat eyes looked at the young man on the other side, a young man covered in enchanted white armor, and holding a deep-sea spear, Demps Martin. The black hole of his hood was full of question mark. At this time, a burst of laughter came from the front. "Ha ha! Demps, your speed is so fast that my enchanted eye can't see it clearly. Is the demon transformation really so strong?" The laughter was pulled back by the Lord's head. Han Dong, who was originally twitching on the ground and even had gray matter flowing out from his ears, was standing in the same place with a smile on his face. The gray matter that flowed out was just enough to be used as paint to outline a crazy laughing mouth on his face. What's going on? Lord Ramstein could not understand the situation in front of him. He had seen knights and even tasted the taste of the talent tree. The 3 little guys in front of him were only beginner knights, and they were just insignificant appetizers in his eyes. They could not resist at all. But bang! Something was broken. Demps seized the opportunity to shoot and directly broke the core in the Lord's body. It was the core that Han Dong secretly peeked at the banquet regardless of the danger. 1 hit, 1 kill. The body twisted and fell to the ground. The birdcage hanging between the long horns also fell to the ground, and there was a sparrow that was burnt by the lightning inside. At this time, the ground trembled. The brain rats that were originally piled up and connected together began to crazily eat the Lord's remains. Waves of aura from the crazy abyss were gathering. Chapter 8:22. Dead. Wino, who was held in his arms because of the pollution, also tried to look at the center of the rat's brain where the battle broke out along with Han Dong's laughter. She kept chanting the holy prayer in her heart so that she could gradually accept the depraved scene in front of her. One move. Just one move. Demps killed the atavistic body, hybrid demon. What kind of power was this? Moreover, at the same time that he pierced the core of the hybrid demon, Demps immediately turned back to the team from the other side. At this speed, Wino could not see it clearly at all. This is the power of the hybrid demon? The reason why the demonic path, brought back by the great demon captain, could replace the cursed path of the Knights of Misfortune was very simple. The hybrid demon knights who cultivated the demonic path were far stronger than the cursed knights. Since Demps joined the Knights of Misfortune, he had been highly valued by the great demon captain. In a short period of time, he replaced the most favored subordinate of the great demon captain and was directly brought along to be trained by his side. In the past year, Demps had spent almost 80% of his time in the Knights of Misfortune, cultivating as a hybrid demon. It was not because of a coincidence or because he gave up the wizard god knights for a friend. Demps had his eyes on the great demon captain from the beginning. He just used a method that made it seem like he did not want to join to induce the great demon captain to recruit him and gain an advantage in advance. After all, the target that Demps chose to break the seed was the demonic soul, a special hybrid demon that was born from pure magic crystals in the Magic Crystal Canyon hundreds of kilometers away from the Holy City. The talent tree that he obtained was also a unique magic crystal tree. Compared to Han Dong's ability to put together limbs, it seemed chaotic. Demps, who was proficient in all types of magic, used the method of demonic path to gather all the magic in the demonic path, and made himself into a pure and perfect hybrid demon. In the past year of hybrid demon cultivation, Demps had undergone a qualitative change. To some extent, he was similar to the great demon captain, but on another level, he was completely different from the great demon. He stared at Demps, who was covered by the enchanted white armor, light. Not only Han Dong, but even Wino could see the unique aura of a king from Demps. "Sister Wino, have you gotten used to it?" Wino stared at the gathering place of the brain rats in the middle of the junkyard. Coupled with Han Dong's mad laughter realm, she could not help but notice. His brain had gradually accepted such depraved images. Although the pollution was still corroding Wino's body, it was not to the extent that she would fall instantly. She could probably last for about an hour, and her ability would be limited to 80%. The atavistic physique won't die so easily. What followed was the real battle. What Demps killed was just the external body that the Overlord used to receive guests. The real him had completely abandoned his original physical body and buried himself in the deepest part of the rat brain, attempting to touch the higher mythical realm at the edge of madness. Get ready. All right. Demps's one-shot kill also boosted the morale of the team. Withstanding all kinds of pollution, Wino released a more powerful sacred flame realm, burning the nearby brain rats. At the same time, the limited edition Royal Power armor ejected a large amount of steam, forming a pair of steam-shaped angel wings on the back. Seeing that Wino accepted and adapted, Han Dong no longer protected her. Of course, in the next battle against the atavistic physique, Han Dong could not provide protection, and he himself would be in danger. "Count, are you ready? You've already come this far, and you're still asking about your mother? But this teammate of yours is really quite powerful. You were able to defeat me back then because this new king killed that old centipede at the beginning of the battle. Let's do it. It looks like the opponent won't let us live. Even if we die, we can drag you and the new king down with us. It's worth it." The edge of madness. The brain rats that piled up like a mountain devoured the body of the Overlord. This kind of devouring directly caused them to undergo further brainification. The proportion of brain tissue reached more than 80%. It was constantly compressed, blended, and turned into a brain with rat hair, achieving wholeness. Circles of gray matter visible to the naked eye spread out, disturbing the thinking nerves of the three people. There was no way to stop this process at all. Of course, Han Dong did not want to stop it. What he wanted was for the Overlord's body to completely descend. It's still changing? The brain tissue that turned into a whole body continued to undergo a kind of dimensional compression. Buzz. Suddenly, a powerful wave of gray matter rippled out, filling the entire landfill with dust. Han Dong immediately shielded his two teammates and withstood the mental storm alone. What the hell is this? Witnessing the scene of the current transformation, a drop of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. The dust had settled. What appeared in front of everyone was no longer a group of disgusting brain rats, nor was it a connected brain with rat hair. It was Audor, formed by the compression of living brain matter. Audor leading to the truth. A door of brain, leading to the edge of madness. It was light pink, the cerebral cortex was slightly wriggling, and gray matter tentacles grew between the brain's sulci circuits. The overlord of Perugia, Ramstein M. Waziki, was behind the door. He had already transcended the primitive state of the physical body and stood on the edge of madness, trying to touch a deeper, purer mythical realm than the primitive state. However, he was still far away from that step and could only stand on the edge to spy. At this time, the door opened. Han Dong peeked through the gap of the door and saw a little of the inside. It directly caused his eyes to be bloodshot, and drops of blood flowed out from the corners of his eyes. "You are not knights." A primitive, ancient, crazy, and blasphemous voice came from the door. But a hand stretched out and grabbed the side of the door. It was a palm made of brain tissue, and the gaps were filled with rat eyes. When the soles of the feet touched the ground, they would be dyed into a brain structure. When the Overlord's body completely walked out, squeak, 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 the back tissue was connected to the door, and the door was slowly sucked into the body. Then, the absorbed door appeared on the surface of the left and right arms, turning into two shields. It showed a posture of the main and auxiliary hands holding a shield. It was somewhat similar to the posture the Overlord used to receive guests. The shield growing on the left arm had the moon printed on the surface. The shield on the right had the sun printed on it. The sun and the moon were both made of an unknown gray stone, mysterious and powerful. The Overlord's physique was one size larger than that of an ordinary person. An indescribable pressure and a primitive sense of fear arose in Han Dong's heart. At this moment, Han Dong understood why Scarlet Count was afraid. This is the atavistic body? I thought it was mainly about spirit, but why does it look like it can fight? Chapter 8:23. You are not knights. What are you? The Lord, who showed up in his true form, didn't attack immediately. Instead, he gathered the small mouse eyes on his face through flowing. They gathered into a single eye. Lord Ramstein often used such eyeballs to pry into the truth. He, who focused on spirit, was naturally extraordinary in the perception level. Before the battle, he needed to see clearly what these two seemingly human young men were. At least from his perspective, Han Dong and Demps couldn't be ordinary knights. When he used the eye of truth to spy on them, Wino didn't change much, but there was a ball of brilliant holy flame burning in her body. There was a thick tree full of golden leaves growing in her head. But the other two were different. Huh? What are you? When the Lord looked at Han Dong, his single eye kept spinning in his eye socket. He couldn't figure out what kind of creature the target was. The left arm of an ancient mummy engraved with ancient Egyptian incantations. The right arm was swollen and deformed. It had a huge eye, a dog's head, and holy blood. The black vortex torso was like an abyss and two ordinary human legs. He had never seen such a messy combination of completely different ability systems interspersed between different limbs. More importantly, Han Dong's head was covered by a thick layer of gray fog. He couldn't see through it. My eye of truth can't see through your head? When he turned to look at Demps again, an even more abnormal phenomenon happened. A huge black stone throne appeared under Demps. There were thousands of bearers under the throne. Their faces were wrapped in bandages. They used their exposed spines to support the throne in the posture of slaves. When the single eye slowly moved up and looked at Demps on the throne, it was still blocked. Countless strange arms stretched out from behind Demps. His face, limbs, and torso were covered. He couldn't see what Demps was. He couldn't see through it. Whether it was Han Dong or Demps, he couldn't see through it as a spiritual-type hybrid demon. However, this result made Ramstein fall into a state of excitement. All the brain tissue in his body was being pulled out crazily, and his tentacles were darting about. Sometimes it would turn into a pile of rotten meat. Sometimes he would take on a humanoid form. Sometimes it would turn into a one-eyed sphere. Although he did not see through the nature of the two young knights, he got an answer. Oh, I understand. So it was because of this that the king had descended. If I can kill you here, I will be recognized by the king, right? If I can understand your essence, I might be able to understand my own mythological path. In an instant, Ramstein entered a state of excitement. It didn't seem like a spiritual-type hybrid demon at all. It directly used its physical strength to charge at the three of them with its left and right shields. Han Dong and Demps immediately exchanged glances. Just as they were about to make a move, sizzle steam spurted out, as if the wings of an angel were flapping behind him, pushing the golden-haired knight out of the crowd. Wino was the first to rush out at this moment, not to be in the limelight, but because she remembered the dogma of the combat nuns in her heart. Moreover, in Wino's heart, the two juniors were biased towards long-range combat. This battle should have been held back by her. The heavy square shield printed with the prayer pattern blocked in front of her, and all the holy flames were concentrated on the surface of the shield. Holy Mary, merciful Mother of Mercy, please give me the purest holy light to dispel all the evil in the world. Blessing prayer. The holy light covered Wino's body, and even the miraculous image of the Mother of Mercy faintly appeared behind her. Her strength increased, and her holy attribute level increased. Shield clash. At the moment of impact, there was no so-called light to suppress the darkness. The Mother of Mercy's virtual image directly disappeared at this moment. The dazzling holy light was directly swallowed by the countless rats. Even the most fundamental confrontation of strength was lost. Crack. The prayer square shield, blue excellent, directly shattered. Some cracks also appeared on the special edition power armor on her body. Wino flew back like a bullet. The state of her body was even worse. Cough. She coughed out a large mouthful of blood stained with rat hair. This kind of coughing meant that she had been contaminated in her body, and if she continued to fight, there was a high probability that she would completely fall. The power armor was damaged and could not offset this impact. She was about to crash into the garbage pillar hundreds of meters high. Suddenly, a soft touch came from her back. Wino was caught by something soft and landed steadily on the ground. Nicholas? It turned out that she thought too much. It was just a pink octopus tentacle that caught her. At the same time, this tentacle did not even ask for Wino's opinion and directly drilled into her body through her mouth, releasing seawater. With a twitch, the seawater carried a large number of dead rats and was expelled from her body. The contamination was removed. Sister Wino, the next battle will be left to the emissary. The emissary said that you only need to be like me and provide support from the rear. Huh! Wino, who was soaked all over, was confused. In front of her stood a fairy-like girl, who was staring at her with round eyes, and the octopus tentacle also drilled around the girl's body. You are a deep-sea relative? While confused, Wino once again turned her gaze to the center of the battlefield. Now was not the time for her to be curious. The power of the atavistic body was higher than she expected. The holy light collision just now almost used 100% of her power. She could not help but wonder if they could really win. But a battle that defied common sense had already erupted. Two figures, one red and one white, were attacking Lord Ramstein from the front and back, and they did not seem to be at a disadvantage. Wino, who saw this scene, did not care about her injuries. She quickly got up and raised the flail in her hand. She cast 3 different blessings on her teammates one after another. "Nicholas, you must win." The perspective changed. Wino clashed with the Lord's shield, although she lost. But it gave Han Dong and Demps an advantage. At the same time, it also allowed Han Dong to see some clues. The physical strength displayed by this lord who focused on spiritual power gave people a very subjective feeling, rather than an objective feeling. Boom. At the same time, Wino was sent flying. The full status of Holy Shield collision also made the Lord take 2 steps back, and his brain tissue was slightly trembling. At this time, the 2 young men, one red and one white, arrived at the same time. In order to further verify the clues, Han Dong and Dempus both gave up on long-range attacks and took out their strongest close combat stances to engage in a head-on hand-to-hand battle with this suzerain. Demps's demonization and long spear did not change. Han Dong directly called out Count. Activating Blood Oath's Master, Ragorian's Dark Blood Skull, damaged. At the beginning of the battle, he used the powerful Dark Blood Canine Arm posture. Not just the right arm. Han Dong used the perfect adaptation of his body to let the dark blood spread to his left arm, and then used the true camouflage ability of Faceless Head, LV3, to temporarily mold the mummy arm into the same dark blood canine arm. Konai Protector was worn on the face. The corner of the mouth area was painted with a bright red crazy smile face. Mutated demonization -30%. The body's muscle tissue was replaced by tough tentacles, and the whole body's mobility was greatly increased. Han Dong turned into the Red Mad Dog and joined forces with the Demon Dem. It was a crazy battle that completely surpassed their level. Chapter 8:24. Using the time that Wino had bought, as well as some of the clues that were revealed, Han Dong and Demps both took out their strongest close combat stance and attacked together. Lord Ramstein also immediately responded. His battle stance didn't look like a spiritual type hybrid demon at all. Squeak, 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 the brain tissue in the back area grew. Through a special differentiation pattern, a second body grew on the back through the dense brain nerves. The main body and the second body were closely connected, as if they were back to back. The appearance of the second body was completely different. It was a pure rat incarnation. 1. Skin. Dark-colored rat skin wrapped around the whole body. Strange golden twisted runes were imprinted on the skin. Pustules the size of a human head were squeezed together. 2. Head. The hair and skin on the rat's head were shaved off, revealing the white bones and a pair of crazy gray eyes. 4. Twisted and shapeless curved horns grew on the top of the head. 3. Appearance. The body exuded the stinkiest and dirtiest smell in Perugia. The pale yellow light of plague condensed on the surface of the body, the thickest at the claws. 4. Equipment. The shield with moon imprinted on it was given to the second body to deal with the pincer attack from the front and back. This scene was like being in a primitive forest. A savage with a bone spear and a beast's skull on his head and a hunter with a hunting dog were dealing with a big rat that was as big as a mammoth. Demps, change positions. I'll deal with the rat. You stall the main brain in front. This sun shield is making me feel uncomfortable. The shield in the hands of the Lord had completely different attributes. After several direct confrontations, the attributes of the shield had been identified. The sun shield focused on defense and also had a high reflect damage effect. Coupled with the high efficiency of the main body's brain, the reaction speed was above Han Dong's. Every single one of Bloodhound's charge, impact, bite, and tongue entanglement were all perfectly defended against. Through the damage reflect effect, Bloodhound's crooked fangs were shaken and scattered everywhere. The surface of Bloodhound's arm was also covered in bright red wounds, while Han Dong's arms were bleeding profusely. Dempus was also inwardly complaining. I feel uncomfortable here too. I'll count to 3 and you switch. The moon shield's defense was on the weaker side. It was more like a demonic shield, and had a demonic nature. All kinds of dirty spells could be amplified through this shield, and it could also transfer the damage, which was perfectly used by the second body, rat incarnation. Once the shield hit, it would cause Demps to be devoured by the plague rat. Furthermore, the rat incarnation was an expert in sneak attacks. The moment he finished waving the shield with his left hand, his right hand was like a dirty rat hiding in the shadows, turning into the sharpest and most disgusting claws, delivering a super-fast and fatal claw attack. Demps and Han Dong were both related to the outside of the city. However, Demps was not completely immune to corruption like Han Dong. He could only resist it effectively with some of his mother's blessings, characteristics, and treasures. At present, Demps was still a human body and would also be contaminated. After a few rounds of fighting, Demps's body had many claw marks, and one of them had developed an internal infection. In a high-intensity battle, he had no time to use the sixth finger to dig out the contamination in the wound. In terms of speed, Demps was not much different from the rat incarnation. Even if he could find the right opportunity to stab the body, the damage caused would be transferred to the surface of the moon shield, leaving a small hole. Even if magic bombarded the rat's body, it would also be transferred. According to Demps's estimation, even if he stabbed it 100 times, the shield would not be broken. In a situation where both of them were feeling weak, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. First, they communicated the characteristics of the shield to each other and conceived a transfer plan. Demps, the Lord's double body, is controlled by the same mind. Even if we can complete the transfer, it should be able to quickly transfer and specifically target us. There is only one chance. It is during the time when we complete the transfer, but the Lord has not yet reacted. This kind of spiritual body that devours the brain of other creatures has an extremely fast reaction speed. The opportunity may only be less than a second. It is almost impossible to break through chaotic equipment. Sun and moon shield in the Lord's hand. We have to find a gap during this time. Demps, how confident are you? 30%, at most 40%. Enough, I have 60% here. If we can add them together, the Lord is dead. You still have time to joke, hurry up and change. Demps had not yet changed into the Emperor's new clothes, and this time, he was mainly thinking about Han Dong behind the Lord. If this continued, he would really be in danger. Get ready. Han Dong increased the strength of his right arm, squeezed the underworld blood dog's arm into the shape of a large fist, and gave a frontal punch. Boom! The moment the bloody fist collided with the shield, a bloody mist exploded. Crack, 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 more than 20 curved teeth were broken from the dog's mouth. These teeth were all made of tentacles, and the pain made Han Dong's veins bulge. However, the effect was still very good. This punch directly shook the Lord and forced him to take 2 steps back. Even the second body was affected to a certain extent. It attracted the Lord's attention to the bloody fist to a large extent. At the same time, void tentacles with the color of the universe were derived from the bottom of the pants and circled to Demps. 3, 2, 1. Void transfer. Whoosh. Without any warning, the void transfer was completed in an instant. This also surprised the Lord itself. Just a moment ago, it glimpsed the color of the universe and the strange luster on the other side of the distant starry sky through the eye of truth. This is the ability of that. You. The Lord, who was in shock, extended the time of the opportunity. Suddenly, the wind blew, a breeze blew across his cheeks. The chaotic spear in Dempsey's hand completely overrode the Lord's nerve reaction and broke through the defense of the sun shield. It penetrated the body, the spearhead full of shells and seaweed pierced the heart of the second body. The moment Demps succeeded, a sense of crisis swept through his whole body. The sense of danger did not come from the Lord, but from Han Dong. "Count, come out. Let's control the right arm together. I'll leave the holy sword to you." The underworld blood scattered all over the body gathered in the right arm. The blood arm of the underworld dog became purer. Strength, precision, speed, and blood concentration were all improved. Holy Cross appeared on his wrist. The broken skull of the underworld god was held in the palm of his right hand and used as a basis to construct the holy sword. A strong sense of threat hit the Lord's heart. At this moment, when the Lord looked at Nicholas through the mouse's eyes, he could see an old friend beside him. Scarlet Count, who had come to him in the past, seemed to be standing with Han Dong. Between the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, there was a holy sword that had killed thousands of evil creatures. At this moment, the sword was pulled out by the two of them together. It slashed down head-on. Chapter 825. Ramstein Merlin Wazik. Who would have thought? More than 200 years ago, the outbreak of a war startled the sleeping ancients. Eternal night descent. Humans were squeezed from the top of the predators, and the end of the world arrived. When the eternal night shrouded this relatively special ancient city in the mountains, Perugia, a strange change occurred. This ancient city, which contained rich human history and preserved the pre-Christian Etrurian culture, was chosen by an ancient and held a crazy feast here. This ancient gave the life in the city a chance. Through a method that transcended words, the message was transmitted to the brain of every life. They were told to do what they thought was the craziest thing in 48 hours. Those who reached the target would have a chance to survive. When the time limit was up, all the humans in the city did not reach the crazy standard. They all fell into the abyss and became the craziest slaves at the bottom. However, a mouse hiding in the depths of the darkness became the only winner. This crazy mouse seemed to have undergone a genetic mutation and was about 3 times the size of its peers. It actually ate all its peers in the streets, in the garbage dump, in the sewers, or living in human buildings within the limited time. Not a single one was left. Moreover, it was very picky in its diet. It only ate brains. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why this mouse was so smart. The crazy act successfully reached the standard. Not only did it get a chance to survive, but it even received a gift from the old king. It was as if the brain was surrounded by tens of thousands of soft tentacles. This mouse instantly gained a unique consciousness and turned into a giant mouse egg. It absorbed the nutrients of all the dead lives in Perugia and surpassed the wild monster stage. It hatched into a hybrid demon, a rat-man hybrid demon with an abnormally developed brain. When it hatched from the egg, it saw the supreme god who gave it the gift. Crazy noises that were above the dimension were like nails that pierced into the mantis demon's brain. I didn't expect that such a weak world would have such an interesting life. I hereby bestow upon thee the name of Lumsden. I've given you a new life and freedom, then, what can you give me, Ramstein? The rat-man hybrid demon knelt on the ground and replied in the most devout but crazed tone, I will offer all the craziness in Perugia to you, and then all the craziness in the entire Italian territory to you. After receiving his answer, the ancient left behind a parchment and left. Holy Sword / The shield made with the Chaos Moonstone as its core was actually unable to transfer damage. In other words, the young man's attack had exceeded the upper limit of what Moonstone could bear, and it was unable to complete the transfer. So, it was killed with one slash. His body was destroyed by the sacred sword. Whether it was the dirty rats hiding in the body or the extra brains that were trying to reconstruct the body, they were all wiped out and turned into ashes. Some sort of subjective interference had been cut off by this sword. Clang! The sun and moon shields fell to the ground. In the blink of an eye, Demps, who should have been at the center of the battlefield, also left. The moment before the sacred sword slashed down, Demps used his fastest speed to hide very far away. He was even 100 meters away from Knight Wino's position. Huff! Huff! He panted heavily. Demp's eyes were even covered with a layer of fear. He had never shown such a nervous expression before. He muttered to himself, "Where did Nicholas get this power? Why do I feel so uncomfortable?" At that moment I actually had a sense of death. I forgot myself. I have to adjust as soon as possible. The Lord of Perugia City belongs to that king. If I touch that level, I will have a chance to be reborn. Demps tried his best to stabilize his mind. Although the aura in the garbage dump had weakened by more than half, it still existed. Deep in the plain, a lowly rat man holding a brain stood at the edge of the darkness. Under his feet was the bottomless abyss of craziness. With its mental state, it was not enough to go to the deepest part and participate in the crazy party held by the king. If it was too hasty and embraced craziness, it would cause it to lose all rationality. It would become a powerful but completely lost walking corpse. "What can you give me, Ramstein?" The question from 200 years ago echoed in the rat man's head again. It was stronger than ever before. This time, it did not answer verbally. Instead, it took a step forward and threw itself into the deepest part of the craziness regardless of the consequences. It gave everything to this crazy king. During the process of falling into the abyss, it was as if time was going backward. It was also as if it was a lantern before death. Ramstein gradually returned to the original street rat. It lived in the darkest and dirtiest corner. Because of genetic mutation, even other rats of the same kind were quite repulsed by it. But it still lived strong. It hunted for food alone and had a beautiful dream at the bottom, where other rats were unwilling to live. Slowly, it had not been able to touch the myths and could not accept the craziness at the bottom. Its consciousness gradually dissipated and turned into an absolute craziness. In the area above Perugia City, gray clouds gathered together and gradually formed a huge abyss that led to the depths of the eternal night. Stationed at the foot of the mountain, several commanders who were waiting for the result of the war looked at this strange phenomenon. Their expressions were quite ugly. The center of everything, in the junkyard area, a gray sphere appeared at the location of the lord who had been killed by Han Dong. Buzz buzz buzz. The moment the sphere appeared, Han Dong's brain immediately produced a strong resonance reaction. This resonance directly caused Han Dong to kneel on the ground and not get up. One hand on the ground and the other hand on his head. At the same time when the resonance was produced, Han Dong vaguely saw a crazy thing being born in this sphere, a crazy existence that could swallow him. "Togu, take me away first." An order was given. An iron chain extended directly to the garbage pillar hundreds of meters away and joined the team members there. As the distance increased, the resonance weakened. Han Dong showed a difficult expression and muttered, "This guy actually gave up his consciousness and let himself be swallowed crazily. Nicholas, you've gone too far. If it was another atavistic body, your sword just now would have ended." Who knew that he would encounter the servant of the old king? As long as he is willing to give up, some things that go against the rules can be realized. Demps also had a bitter smile on his face. "What should we do? Run away?" Wino stared at the scene in front of her and her whole body was trembling. Before Han Dong could make a decision, a domain with the gray sphere as the center spread out. All the substances in the junkyard were sucked into the sphere and used to form the crazy thing. A hand stretched out from the sphere. It was a huge arm that was a mixture of rats, gray matter, garbage, building stones, and other substances that originated from Perugia City. The crazy pollution released was stronger than before. It was enough to smash Han Dong and the others into pieces with a slap. Because everything around was being absorbed, the gray matter at the edge of the junkyard became extremely weak, until it completely disappeared. Sizzle! Along with the sound of steam spraying and gears moving, came the sound. Troops immersed in the war and wearing power mechs set foot in this area. The time is just right, staring at the siege knights that passed by his team and blocked in front of him. Han Dong, with a smile on his face, put his arm on Dempsey's shoulder. Let's go. It's time to finish the final work. Chapter 8:26. An hour ago, important news came from the siege troop. 6th Company reporting. Perugia City's mental corruption method has been determined to be a whole-body parasitic corruption. Using the contaminated bodies in the egg structure as a medium, it can be transmitted through sight, hearing, or direct contact. This parasitic corruption has a long incubation period, and it will not erupt until it accumulates to a certain amount. Through Knight Mesker's blood exchange therapy and targeted holy light burning, the removal rate of the contaminated medium can reach more than 80%. When the news was confirmed, the siege troops immediately organized a great cleansing activity. The entire army gathered in the occupied streets of the mountainside area, and the healing troops performed a full-body cleansing on every knight, effectively removing the rat egg medium lurking in their bodies. The strange mental corruption was effectively contained, and the potential risks were completely eliminated. For a moment, the uneasiness buried in the hearts of the entire army was lifted, and their morale soared. 4th Company reporting, Kaliningrad Street has been cleared. 2nd Company reporting, St. Tebe Street has been cleared. 1st Company reporting, Central Square and the Consul's Palace have been cleared. Reports of victory came one after another. When all the evil creatures on the surface of the city were cleared in the most barbaric way with the least number of casualties, gray clouds gathered in the sky from an unknown source. It formed a terrifying gray maw, almost like a passage leading to the depths of Evernight. At the same time, a strange gray storm shrouded the ancient city in the mountains. The disguise of the entire Perugia city was swallowed up by the storm, revealing the dirty, depraved, and corrupted rat inner city. Due to the strong energy fluctuations and the signs of a battle between the knights and the hybrid demons, the siege troops immediately headed to the bottom of the abyss at the fastest speed. Knight Charlie, perspective due to the Lord's misgivings about Charlie's individual strength. Through the method of land deed interference, he trapped Knight Charlie alone in an independent space in Turlayer. Then, he arranged for his trusted aide, magic flute user, Truman Zorro, to lead all the hybrid demons in the inner city to the sealed space to deal with the Knight. In the end, they were all wiped out. Apart from some contaminated lines at the corner of his right eye, Knight Charlie had no other external injuries. However, after the battle ended, Charlie also needed to clean up the puppets in his hands. Most of the mental pollution was withstood through puppet transfer. With his own strength, he had killed 2 mature mantis demons, 19 newborn mantis demons, and various creations and low-level structures from the Overlord. Such a battle record could only be described as terrifying. As the gray matter that restricted space dissipated, Charlie leisurely walked out of the building that trapped him and met up with the large group that had just rushed down. In terms of night level, Charlie was on the same level as the commander of the siege troops, the 3rd Captain, Arthur demonized. It was just that his military rank was lower than the other parties, and when the two met, they addressed each other as peers. "Charlie, why are you here?" Arthur's face was filled with shock, as if he had just seen a ghost. He even prepared to attack. Knight Charlie's expression changed as he immediately realized the problem. "Hey, Arthur, do you want me to talk about what you did in Vivian's Love Tavern 13 years ago in front of everyone?" You really are, Charlie. What's going on?" Charlie immediately answered. Could it be that someone impersonated the four of us and returned to the army? It shouldn't be. The few commanders are all in the army. They knew that there was a problem with the art festival, so they would definitely conduct a strict identity check on us. Didn't they find out? Arthur was still in a state of doubt towards Charlie in front of him. After all, things like memories could also be copied. At this moment, Charlie moved his finger, and an invisible thin string was pulled in the air. More than 10 mantis demon heads were all strung on the thin string and fell in front of Arthur. Among them was the messenger of the magic flute. This completely confirmed their identities. Arthur's face was ugly as he explained. The reason why we launched the siege was because you have returned safely. Dozens of perceptive knights and the Eye of Expedition conducted a body check on you, and then sent you to the mobile sanctuary for Commander Olivia to personally purify you. There was no problem at all. This is definitely not a disguise that atavistic body can do. Could it be that the old king is interfering with this matter? Charlie shook his head. He could not give a conclusion. Hurry to the junkyard. Those 3 little guys are having a head-on conflict with the Lord of Perugia City. The current phenomenon should be caused by them. The old king may have interfered with this matter, but it should be before the war broke out. I don't think the old king would care about a mid-level title deed. Arthur, let's hurry over. 3 little guys against the atavistic body? Charlie, are you joking with me? Although Arthur was puzzled, the situation was urgent and there was no time to think. The entire army rushed to the junkyard as fast as possible. Junkyard. The hundreds of meters tall garbage pillars were all absorbed by the gray matter sphere. The chaotic life form of 100 meters tall had basically taken shape. Although its composition was quite chaotic, its appearance still looked like a rat man with long curved horns. Seeing that the main army had arrived and blocked in front of them, Han Dong, who was relieved, was also full of fighting spirit. Demps, let's get ready. Just as the 2 of them were about to enter the battle, whooshed invisible thin strings bound their bodies. Together with Knight Wino, they were directly dragged to the back of the army. Standing in front of them was Knight Charlie. He reached out and patted both of their shoulders at the same time. It's already beyond expectations to be able to force the atavistic body to abandon itself. The rest will be left to Arthur and the rest. There are more important things to confirm with you. At the same time, a thin string was directly connected to Han Dong's brain through his earhole, carrying out a one-on-one secret conversation. Nicholas, tell me honestly, how much do you know about the old king of this city? Also, did he interfere with this battle? I really don't know about the old king behind this. However, I can be sure of one thing. When we were dealing with the Lord, there was no outside interference. Could it be that something else happened on the expeditionary army's side? Then it's fine. The interference happened before the battle and did not violate the world rules. That's right. The old king created our absolute camouflage to deceive the commander's eyes. Let's leave it at that for now. As long as there is no violation of the rules, it's not a big problem. You guys stay here and receive treatment in peace. I'll go and help. After saying that, a thin string was connected to the front of the army, and Knight Charlie immediately entered the battle. Only Han Dong was left, deep in thought. That's strange. What was the old king's reason for doing this? Taking the opportunity to obtain internal information of the expeditionary army? Or was there some other purpose? Staring at the gray matter clouds in the sky, Han Dong covered his head with his hand. He had a very strange feeling. Chapter 8:27. Because the problem of consciousness invasion was found in advance. The siege troops retained almost 80% of their combat power and went deep into the depths, facing the Lord who had fallen into madness. The war was about to start. During this period, the one who performed the most brilliantly was naturally the commander, Arthur. He showed a monster-standard demonized posture, a large amount of steam directly overflowed from his mouth and turned into a nearly 5-meter demonized monster, fighting head-on with the supergiant lord. All the magic energy circulating in the body was used to strengthen the body. Arthur's fighting style gave people the feeling of the Hulk. He could even withstand the crushing attack of the Lord alone and fight head-on at the fist level. On the other hand, Knight Charlie was more like a passerby. He walked freely on the battlefield, pulled by the silk thread, his body that was almost unaffected by gravity, moving back and forth on the giant body of the Lord. It looked like he was dodging the attack. In fact, he was installing a homemade puppet bomb at the key position. At the same time, there were hundreds of official knights who had been through hundreds of battles, attacking from the front. Some of the combined magic attacks were especially effective, under the suppression of absolute power and numbers. Even the atavistic body, Ramstein, who had completely fallen into madness, was slowly approaching true death. The body of the giant rat, which was accumulated from countless garbage, was gradually collapsing, exposing the gray core in the deepest part of the body. Ha ha! The heart of madness! Just as Arthur bent his knees and jumped, accumulating magic energy in his arms, intending to directly crush the core, a silk thread shot out and connected to the surface of the sphere first. An extremely fat puppet that looked like a living person immediately attached itself to the surface of the gray core. It opened its mouth and swallowed it. "Charlie, you bastard! This core accumulates pure madness. It can be used as a material for my new puppet. It's too wasteful to destroy it directly." Circles of strange gray lines appeared on the surface of the fat puppet's body. It was obvious that it had absorbed part of the essence of madness. Plop! A smaller sphere was released from the puppet's excretory organ. Arthur faced it and smashed it with his palms. It was faintly smashed. The Lord of Perugia, the atavistic body, Mantis Demon, the Mad Rat King, Ramstein Merlin, M. Wazik was completely erased. The first experimental siege of the Great Expedition had been won. According to the siege book, because the attacking side did not have the authority to control the title deed, the medium title deed, Perugia City, would be destroyed, and it would become a masterless city. All residents of the city under the Lord's command would be at the mercy of the attackers. The land deed made of parchment floated into the air and gradually dissipated. "What's that?" Because of the resonance in his head, Han Dong found a gray spot in the center of the parchment. At the last moment when the title deed dissipated, the gray spot instantly enlarged, enveloping Perugia City and the surrounding area. Within the gray area, the flow of time particles decreased to 0. Only Han Dong's personal time was not affected. Meanwhile, a figure slowly descended from the giant mouth formed by the gray clouds. Just as Han Dong tried to raise his head, an almost tangible pressure engulfed his entire body. Even with the support of the black vortex torso, Han Dong was still unable to maintain a standing posture. Kneel on one knee, the bones in his body kept trembling due to the pressure, and he felt that they would collapse at any time. Han Dong had been in the Gain Forest, in the study of the sacred city, in the deep sea of the multi-layered dream. He had seen different old kings, and each king gave him a different feeling. Some were panic, some were mystery, and some were nothingness. But in terms of pure pressure, they were not as good as this old gray king who was about to descend. Even the idea of spying on his appearance was suppressed in his head. If he forced himself to raise his head, it might cause the cervical vertebrae to break, the eyeballs to detach, and even the central nervous system to be interrupted. His eyes could only be tilted 45 degrees downward at most. Thud, a gray foot without impurities fell into his sight. There was a bronze thumb ring engraved with distorted images on the thumb. Every time Han Dong blinked, the shape of the foot he saw was different. Sometimes it was formed by groups of centipedes, sometimes it was a ball of hair, and sometimes it was countless eyeballs. But when it finally calmed down, it would turn into a gray foot without impurities and wearing a thumb ring. As Los Nicholas, the sound of confusion reverberated in his head until it gradually became clear. Very good performance. I'm quite satisfied with the small theater this time. Especially the part where you acted before the conflict between you and Ramstein. I really want to invite you to my abyss as a guest. When Han Dong understood the advanced language, he immediately showed a shocked expression. All of a sudden, there was a touch. It was as if the old king was reaching out and touching Han Dong's head. This feeling was a little comfortable, but comfort was comfort. The head was Han Dong's foundation. If it was damaged, everything would be over. Phew. I don't know which master copied the head. It seems flawed, but it's actually so perfect. Nicholas, can you use simple words to describe how you feel about using this head? When the old king said this, a certain restriction was also lifted. Han Dong obtained the authority to talk directly with the old king. The conversation here needed to be cautious, and there must be no unnecessary nonsense. Disguise and development balanced each other just right. Very interesting. It's about time. I'll continue to pay attention to you. I'm looking forward to your performance in London. Continue to participate in the small activities of you humans. When the voice ended, the gray color dissipated. A part of a time, he seemed to have been erased. In the blink of an eye, Han Dong was no longer in the garbage dump of Perugia. Instead, he followed the siege troops back to the expeditionary army. Commander Arthur also reported the disguise incident immediately. He thought that the internal secrets of the expeditionary army had been leaked. Who knew that the situation was not as complicated as everyone thought. Instead, nothing happened. The disguise, created by the old king himself, deceived all the detection methods of the expeditionary army. The moment the siege book was signed, the disguise that stayed in the sanctum dissipated on its own. It did nothing. This made everyone, including the great demon captain, puzzled. They could not understand the meaning of the old king's actions. Instead, it allowed the humans to establish an advantage when signing the siege book. In the end, the old king lost a medium-sized land deed. Only a few people knew the reason. The old king behind Perugia. The purpose of doing this is it just to let me go deep into Perugia without any interference and directly contact the Lord here to act out the so-called small theater that he mentioned? Just because it's interesting. He casually gave up an atavistic body under his command and threw away a medium-sized land deed. Ha ha, ha ha. Han Dong, who was leaning in the corner, kept shaking his head and laughing self-deprecatingly. He was laughing at his shallow understanding of the king. Chapter 828. Experimental Siege. Perugia City was a great success. Not only was it a success in the battle, but it also proved the feasibility of the O-World rules. The knights who participated in the battle were affected by the siege book. When they won the siege, they received an increase in the spirit resistance. Moreover, the expeditionary army collected a certain amount of chaotic materials and unique, purple, quality chaotic equipment. It was the dual shield of sun and moon that Lord Ramstein used in battle. It was a rare set equipment. When the two pieces were used together, it would produce a set effect. Demon King's Castle. The siege troops gathered in the hall area and were awarded the war ribbon. For Han Dong and the other three who performed special operations before the battle and made great contributions to the victory, in addition to being awarded a high-grade ribbon, they also received the right to distribute the spoils of Perugia. The great demon commander looked at Demps with great admiration. He held 2 shields in his hands and intended to give them to the 4 of them. You have the right to use this pair of chaotic shields. However, I need to verify in advance if you can use it. For this kind of heavy shield, and a pair at that. It seemed that only Wino, who was charging at the front, could use it. However, the pollution characteristic of chaotic equipment was incompatible with Wino's identity as a nun. Unless the shield was brought to the sanctum for baptism, it was very likely that the characteristics of the shield would be weakened and even the quality would drop. Wino was the first to deny it. "Great Demon Commander, you should ask them. We, the Wocombat nuns, can't use this kind of equipment." "Well, the three of you mainly use long-range means. Even if you also practice close combat, you are more inclined to attack. If it is not useful, I will distribute the shield to the most suitable knight according to the battle contribution." Charlie was very interested in the shield. He could use the material of the shield and the essence of madness he collected from the Overlord to create a new mad puppet. But considering that the main contributors to the Overlord's war were the two juniors beside him, he didn't ask for it shamelessly. Han Dong suddenly stood up and made an interesting suggestion. "Great Demon Commander, when Demps and I fought with the Lord, we have verified the characteristics of the shield. I suggest that we give this pair of treasures to Demps. He can make the most of it." This time, it was Demps's turn to look at Han Dong. Since it had come to this, Dempus did not deny it and indicated that he could control the two shields. When the great demon saw that such a treasure was about to fall into the hands of his favorite knight, he didn't even bother to verify it and directly threw it over. The moment he took the shield, Demps used a unique finger technique to perfectly remove the sun stone and moon stone embedded in the shield. The shield that had lost its core immediately turned into a puddle of stinky brain mucus. From the very beginning, it was not a shield, but a pair of sun and moon gray stones, taken from the Berserk Abyss. The day stone was indestructible and had a powerful anti-damage effect, while the moon stone contained magic energy and had the ability to transfer. Although Dempus had a mother behind him, Dempus had a mother. However, all the props that came from his mother were borrowed and not given. Although Demps had a special identity outside the city, he had to fight for a lot of materials and equipment himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to work so hard to earn money in the Holy City. There was one thing that was quite pitiful. Demps was promoted to an official knight as a mage, but he didn't even have a decent staff. He only had a magic book used during the apprentice knight period as a support. As for the deep-sea spear used in close combat, it was a treasure borrowed from his mother. Of course, Demps was quite picky and unlucky. All along, the equipment or materials obtained from the Destiny events or the Destiny treasure chests had nothing to do with staff. The resources in the Holy City were limited, and high-quality staffs or materials were priceless. No matter how many massage services Demps did, no matter how much money he earned, he couldn't buy suitable equipment. The sun-moon gray stone that he had obtained so far might become the core material for Demps to make magic equipment. Senior Charlie, Senior Wino, thank you for your hard work. You two are quite capable. This way, I've repaid the favor I owe you. Since the Expeditionary Army has verified the effectiveness of the world rules, there won't be any major battles in the next part of the journey until we reach Minano City in the first stage. Before that, don't cause any more trouble. It's still a big risk to play with you like this. Charlie waved his hand and returned to his legion alone. As for Knight Wino, because of this special infiltration operation, her opinion of Han Dong had greatly changed. Next time, if you need anything, you can call me, okay? Wino quickly wiped away some of the feelings that had arisen in her head and returned to the special forces of the combat nuns. Just like that, Han Dong and Demps were left behind to return to the 4th Legion together. Walking in the temporary camp of the Expeditionary Army, Han Dong directly hit Demps in the waist with his elbow. Demps, next time, don't make such a big decision so directly. Give me some time to think. On the other hand, although the infiltration operation went according to plan, there were still too many uncertainties in it. For example, the spiritual type atavism body can change oneself into a melee hybrid demon that can fight and defend through subjective thoughts. Ouch, my body is quite weak. Be gentle. Besides, didn't the two of us benefit quite a lot? I got the suitable materials to make a magic weapon here. As for you, you should have already talked to that person behind Perugia City, right? Most people could not understand the intervention of the old king during this siege. However, Demps understood and knew that a large part of the reason for the old king's intervention was Nicholas. This was also the reason why Demps took the initiative to suggest bringing Han Dong into the city in advance. Han Dong quickly put his finger between his lips and did not talk about this matter for the time being. Who would have thought that Dempus would use some rather obscure words to continue speaking? The thing behind Perugia City has exceeded the preset specifications of the Grand Expedition. You can move freely without being affected after talking with such an existence indirectly proves that my guess is correct. The secret of your brain is closely related to that. Neither I nor Mother can reach the height of this person. Nicholas, the answer you are looking for requires your own efforts to achieve it. Of course, if you need my help, I will accompany you throughout the whole process. You rascal, I told you to be quiet today. Han Dong was no longer the weak and sickly trainee knight from before. He put his powerful right arm on Demps's other shoulder and said with a smile, "Since things have come to this, of course, I have to drag you down with me." Ha ha! It's still early. Let's talk about it after the grand expedition safely ends. The two's particularly close and teasing behavior happened to be seen by Mia, who was not far away waiting for her husband to come home. There was no need to think to know what Mia was complaining about. Chapter 829. Perugia was less than 200 kilometers away from the Holy City. Through the Eye of Expedition, they could communicate with the Holy City without any barriers. The details of the siege of Perugia were sent back to the Holy City. The black and white prophets, Congreve Newton, and the wise men and advanced prophets who stayed in the Holy City gathered in the assembly hall for an important meeting. They could even decide whether the great expedition would continue or stop. The old king interfered slightly before the war, but the purpose is unknown. What can be confirmed is that the secrets of the expeditionary force were not leaked. Most importantly, the usability of the world rule was further confirmed. The Assembly has decided that the Great Expedition will continue according to the phased plan. Everyone present can raise questions based on this experimental siege or give your opinions on the Great Expedition plan. Since the test results were all normal, most of the participants had no objections and immediately signed to approve the proposal. A participant sitting in the first row on the southeast side of the circular seats suddenly raised his hand. "Mr. Black and White, please speak. I don't have any opinions on the Great Expedition plan. However, regarding the management and security of the Holy City during the Great Expedition, I have some suggestions. I don't know if I can raise them here. The Great Expedition is a joint operation of everyone in the Holy City. The internal situation of the Holy City is completely communicated in this meeting. Please allow me to show you a document. Because the use of abilities was prohibited in the Assembly Hall, a special document was handed to the document display table by the Assembly assistant next to Mr. Black and White. For a moment, a real magic projection of this document appeared in front of all the participants. Rather than a report, it was more like a large thesis on astrology. It involved some profound terms in astrology. Even experts in this field wouldn't be able to understand this thesis in a short amount of time. After the Assembly Hall agreed, Mr. Black and White explained the document. The Great Expedition will be fully taken over by the Assembly Hall, so I don't have to worry about it. All this time, I've been focusing on the future of the Holy City. I wrote this thesis a week after the Great Betrayer incident. The president of the Writers' Association, Stephen Macnofsky, was possessed by a mythical hybrid demon. Due to his excellent disguise skills, by the time I suspected him, he had already taken the position of guild leader. I had always thought of him as the greatest threat in the Holy City. Because of this, I made a huge mistake. At this point, Mr. Black and White pointed to the legend on the thesis. With the Great Betrayer incident as the key point, I drew this star energy spectrum map within 3 years. Everyone can see that 3 years ago, the trend of the star energy spectrum was quite turbulent, and the degree of chaos and potential impact factors in the Holy City had been in a state of continuous growth. This means that when Stephen was in power, he had been secretly plotting and arranging the disintegration of the Holy City. Mr. Black and White pointed at the node. After our tireless efforts, President Stephen's identity has been exposed. With the return of Commander Malone and the strength of Commander Alex, this mythical body, hybrid demon, suffered irreparable soul injuries and completely escaped from the Holy City. Subsequently, we also carried out a comprehensive cleanup of the intranet established by Stephen. Although I dare not say that all of his henchmen, including civilians, were eliminated. But what is certain is that all of the people in power in the Holy City, even the people in secondary control of small organizations, have nothing to do with Stephen. Logically speaking, the trend of the star energy spectrum should have gradually stabilized after the incident. However, the fluctuations still exist and have increased greatly recently. A counselor spoke here. Mr. Black and White. The threat of the Holy City has never been eliminated since its establishment. After all, the situation of the old king attacking the city could happen at any time. Shouldn't some fluctuations be normal? Prosecutor Sewers is right. However, the energy spectrum I drew is based on the internal situation of the Holy City and completely excludes factors outside the city. In terms of potential impact factors alone, with the start of the Great Expedition, this index has risen to the peak of the Great Betrayer incident a year ago. I speculate that there is still a person hiding in the Holy City who is more dangerous than Stephen Macnofsky. As soon as this was said, many people present gasped. At this time, Newton raised his hand and interrupted the conversation. I know a little about astrology. In the 3 minutes and 57 seconds that you guys were speaking just now, with the help of the auxiliary brain, I completed a complete analysis of this paper. According to Mr. Black and White's calculations, about 8 months later, there will be a cataclysmic turmoil inside the Holy City. Am I right? Yes. However, there are 3 hypotheses based on which this inference is based. I won't say more about the hypotheses that have little impact. I only want to confirm 2 things. First, can the influence of Captain Hugo be completely eliminated? No, but the existence of Captain Hugo will not cause an increase in the factor. Second, the involvement of the 5 captain-level big shots in the Great Expedition has led to a balance shift inside the Holy City. Throughout the whole paper, this impact factor has not been fitted into the final energy spectrum curve. This will also have a greater impact, right? In the case of the interaction of the above 2 points, the impact factor will inevitably increase. Am I right? Indeed. That's all I have to say. However, Mr. Black and White's paper is of great significance and is still worthy of everyone's reference. Indeed, the security issue of the Holy City is not inferior to the Great Expedition, so it must be treated with caution. Mr. Black and White's expression remained the same as he continued his speech. Yes, Mr. Newton has given me the problem that I was going to talk about at the end. This paper is not complete enough for the Holy City to take corresponding measures. That's all I have to say. I hope everyone in the Parliament can carefully consider this matter. The Parliament chairman, who was in charge of the recollection of the meeting, affirmed. Yes. After the meeting, we will carefully examine this paper and have in-depth communication with Mr. Black and White later. If the problem is identified, we will use the power interruption to conduct a one-on-one investigation of every person in power in the Holy City. The meeting ended. Just as Mr. Black and White left the Parliament area and was about to board the carriage outside the venue, Mr. Newton, who was wearing an aristocratic wig, suddenly came up to him. "Mr. Black and White, can I have a moment of your time? I'm very interested in your paper." "Of course. It's like this. The machinery faith under my command has developed a high-efficiency difference engine. The parameters that have not been fitted in the paper, or can't be fitted, can be fitted with the difference engine." "Oh!" "If Mr. Black and White is interested, you can come directly to the machinery faith to see me. After all, my life's research is linked to the Steam City. This kind of crisis must be resolved in advance." "No problem. I'll find time to meet with Mr. Newton in the near future." "Oh right. I heard that Mr. Black and White has private dealings with Commander Hugo. It's best if you can bring Commander Hugo along to fix all the parameters. After all, it's not just Commander Hugo. The voice slate, stored in the secret library, is also a big problem. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Black and White, for everything you've done for the Holy City." Chapter 830. In order to let the siege force get enough rest, the expeditionary force would station at the foot of Perugia for a period of time. During this period, a 100-person material collection team would be formed to go to the ruins of Perugia to collect all kinds of gold and silver as materials for endless energy. Not long after Han Dong returned to the team, he participated in the material collection as a contributor to the battle. As the main contributor to the defeat of the Lord of Perugia, he received permission from the demon captain to follow the resource collection team as a special member and go up the mountain again. Due to the victory of the battle, the threat was completely eliminated. The material collection team did not have too strict rules. They could either search with the main force or act alone. They only needed to return to the foot of the mountain within the specified time limit. Of course, all searchers needed to be equipped with detection devices and were prohibited from hiding treasures. If the collector found some secret or important information hidden in the depths, they would also receive a certain amount of return when they turned it in. But Han Dong was different. With special permission, he was not subject to any control. Everything that Han Dong found alone could be his own. Of course, he could also choose to voluntarily turn it in to the expeditionary force. The reason why Han Dong chose not to rest and directly threw himself into the material collection operation. It was because he had some private things to do. Naturally, he did not bring any companions and acted alone. Not long after going up the mountain, Han Dong used the anti-gravity effect of the power armor vestment to separate from the search team and went alone along an unknown path to the other end of the ancient city. Click, he sneaked into a hidden residential building and immediately locked the door. Phew! Doctor, come out. A ball of brain cells fell to the ground. Dr. Swollen in strange clothes immediately took shape. Next to him was the nurse assistant from Ghost Stories. As soon as Dr. Swollen appeared, the gears in his brain began to turn slightly, and his perception improved. Sniffing the brain in the air, Dr. Swollen felt like he had come to the capital of food. "Doctor, are the brains here useful to you?" "These low-level brains are useless to me. They can only be used as ordinary food. However, they are very useful for experiments. If I can bring back a few tons of brains, I can also extract enough brain essence. Whether it is the stability study of experimental products or Professor West's drug preparation, they all require a large amount of brain essence to support. All right, let's begin." The goal was to complete the brain collection within 5 hours. After that, I need you to follow me to the center of Perugia City. There should be good things that you and I can use there. "My lord, By the way, how do we collect them? Just the three of us? Just release 100 ghouls and have them collect the brain tissue. I've already placed a large number of crow spies along the way. As long as they don't cross my surveillance range, they won't be discovered by the other knights. All right. The sound of gears turning. The sound of meat being squeezed. The sound of bones piecing together. The ghouls, that originated from the Stuart Manor, had completely transcended the conventional definition. It was a fusion of Stuart's ghoul cultivation technology, the Steam Knight's gear technology, the Old King's gear provided by Dr. Swollen, and Drive West's resurrection potion. The cultivation plan had been continuously optimized. 1. The spine was protruding and filled with a metallic texture. 2. Compared to the size of a normal ghoul, it is 2 to 3 times larger. The texture of the muscles, the flexibility of the leather, and the joints of the gears could all be described with the word perfect. Such a ghoul, whether it was seen by the knights or the hybrid demons, would be incomprehensible. After all, such a product was a fusion of the biological technology that Han Dong brought from the original world. With this as the scientific foundation, the characteristics of life outside the city were integrated with the human technology of the Holy City. 100 terrifying figures immediately spread out on the street. Glass containers were hung on each ghoul's body to collect the brain tissue scattered across the city. The efficiency was 300% faster than expected. The brain collection was completed within 2 hours. When he saw the satisfied gaze from Boss Han, Dr. Swollen finally felt the burden lifted from his heart. To be honest, although Boss Han looked friendly, when it came to scientific research, he would become abnormally serious and could even be described as mean. Dr. Swollen often had nightmares. He dreamed of a horrible scene where he made a big mistake in his research and was directly smashed in the head by Boss Han. When he submitted the research results, he did not meet Boss Han's expectations and was slapped in the head. Or when he conducted an experiment in front of Boss Han, there was a problem with the reagent. Boss Han first scolded him, and then a test tube pierced through his head. The above were all nightmares and could not be substituted for reality. Not bad. Dr. Swollen, follow me. Okay. Dr. Swollen turned into a pile of brain again, and was put in Han Dong's pocket. In fact, Han Dong's original target was the head of Ramstein Overlord. This kind of spirit-type atavism body focused on developing the brain. If he could get the skeleton or extract some of the rat's brain essence, it would be a great improvement for Dr. Swollen. Unfortunately, the Holy Sword did not completely kill the target. In the end, the siege troops arrived and killed the Overlord. Han Dong did not have the chance to collect the body at all. Now they came to the garbage field. At the bottom of the abyss again. Han Dong wanted to see if he could find some brain tissue fragments of the Overlord. After all, this was an atavism body. Even if it was just some minced meat, Han Dong wanted to bring it back for research. The concentration of pollution in the garbage field is quite high. No wonder the other knights don't want to come down here. Dr. Swollen, come out. Your attributes are similar to this Overlord's. Maybe you can sense something. Sir, where is this direction? Is it the area where you fought the Overlord? The street that Dr. Swollen pointed to was not the same as the garbage field. Can you sense it? Well, when I stare in this direction, the old king gear in my head will buzz. Lead the way. A feeling of treasure hunting was born in his heart. Intuition told Han Dong that with the guidance of Dr. Swollen, he might be able to find Lord Ramstein's rat house. It seemed to be hidden in the depths of Scarlet Manor. He needed to go deeper through Count's private theater to reach the secret room. It hid Count's unknown secrets, the network of relationships he established behind the blood god's back, and the treasures Count obtained from invading everywhere with the convenience of moving land deed. It's here, this is. On the ground full of filth, there was a stone door imprinted with brain, sun and moon. It was exactly the same as the painting Understanding the Truth in the palace hall. Chapter 831. Garbage Dump. It was an ordinary garbage dump. Thanks to Dr. Swollen's guidance, Han Dong saw a hidden stone door hidden under the garbage dump. Because of the victory of the war and the death of Lord Perugia, the seal on the stone door had disappeared. However, opening the door still required a little trick. The sun door needed to be opened with brute force, and the moon door needed to be opened with magic. Han Dong happened to be on the left and right, so he used his strength together. Rumble! A staircase made of monster skulls appeared in front of him, and deep inside, there was a smell that made Dr. Swollen. After stepping on the skulls, Han Dong immediately closed the stone door. At the same time, he controlled the crows outside to pile up a large amount of garbage on the surface of the stone door, trying to prevent other knights from discovering this place. At least, he had to wait until Han Dong took what he needed. "Let me out to see." There was a clamor in his body. Scarlet Count, whose head was in Blood Dog's mouth, immediately came out. "Count, why did you come out? It's none of your business now." "Humph! Without this Count, how could you defeat this mad rat? Now that we have come to such an important place, of course, I have to come out and see. Most of the city lords will set up a secret treasury or some confidential document room in their territory. I am also very curious about what this mad rat is hiding." Han Dong was too lazy to argue with Count. Time was of the essence. If a knight found this place, Han Dong would not be able to take the good things inside. He went down the skulls. Who would have thought that there would be neither a treasure trove nor an office to store confidential documents as he had expected? The only place set up in this secret underground area was the sacrificial room. Dr. Swollen's brain also came from there. This Count knew that this mad rat that eats brains would not have a treasure room. However, this stupid rat does not even have a decent archive room. It actually stores all the information in its brain. Sigh, how boring. If you are bored, then go back to your body. No. I still want to see how this mad rat worship. After all, it corresponds to the old king behind it. This person is much, much stronger than my original master, so the method of worship should also be different. What level is the blood god? Old Middle King. Count used the word much to describe the difference between the two. Han Dong was also curious and continued to ask. It's just the difference between the middle and upper positions. Since they're both former kings, why is the difference so big? It's much bigger than you think. The relationship between the kings is also more complicated than you think. If you want to use a book to explain the Wei King problem, you can easily fill up an entire bookshelf. I don't have time to go into detail with you. Hurry up and go to the ritual room to take a look. It's quite easy to please the old king. All right, we'll talk about it later. He pushed open the loose stone door. Han Dong was surprised by the scene inside the sacrificial room. His eyes flashed with a look that was even more excited than when he had found the treasure. This is hybrid demon technology. It wasn't just Han Dong. Dr. Swollen was also in a state of excitement. Tentacles drilled out of his brain, wanting to touch the technological products attached to the wall. The sacrificial room was completely different from the dirty scene in Perugia. One, clean and dust-free large square gray stones were the main cornerstone structure of the sacrificial room. 2, between the gray stones, there was deliberately a gap, as thick as an arm to arrange the cables. A translucent black metal was used to seal the gap, so that the material transferred between the cables would not be affected by the outside world. 3. Various strange-shaped experimental containers with a strong biometal style were neatly arranged between the walls or hung in the ceiling area. The designer of the sacrificial room perfectly blended the organs of biological individuals with metal, showing a dark aesthetic that Han Dong seemed to have seen in a movie. The style of the movie Alien is very similar to this sacrificial room. Doctor, what do you mean by hybrid demon technology? Rumor has it that the old kings who wandered the other side of the universe could directly read the knowledge systems of different civilizations in the universe through a certain extra-dimensional method. They could even understand some of the knowledge structures that existed in the universe itself. They had advanced technology that ordinary old kings couldn't obtain or understand. We called it hybrid demon technology. Rumor has it that this technology could make the originally extremely difficult hybrid demons as easy as breathing. They could directly cultivate hybrid demons to obtain the newborn hybrid demons. Huh? If that was the case, Han Dong would do anything to obtain this technology. But after thinking about it carefully, it couldn't be that simple. If such technology really existed, those low-level kings would do everything they could to obtain it. That world had already become a paradise for hybrid demons, and humans would have no chance to breathe. TSK. It's not that simple. Count pretended to be disdainful and continued. The foundation of mastering hybrid demon technology is not the equipment, energy, or materials. It depends on whether the experimenter's brain has such a system. If you can't understand this technology, the ready-made equipment in front of you is useless. The sacrificial room here has indeed integrated hybrid demon technology, and the sacrificial method is already very obvious. The Lord of Perugia needs to use the equipment here to create a certain number of hybrid demons for the Lord every once in a while. You can't even understand this technology, let alone use it. Count's original owner, Blood God, couldn't do it. He could only use blood wine to nourish the hybrid demons under his command. This technology is exclusive to the old kings. There's nothing to refer to here, let's hurry up and leave. When the knights find here, they will naturally find a way to destroy this hybrid demon technology. The low-level species like humans are also very self-aware. Just when Count was disdainful of hybrid demon technology, Han Dong strode to a device that was supplying energy normally. I already told you, it's useless. You want to use the technology here? Even if it's your new king friend, it's useless. At this moment, staring at such a perfect and beautiful technological creation, Han Dong had completely entered the state of researcher, and he couldn't hear any sound from the outside world. He reached out and touched the surface of the living fetal ball that seemed to be the operating panel. With the faceless head as the beginning, tentacles overflowed from the palm of his hand and drilled into the fetal ball. Beep beep beep. The experimental equipment was activated. In the oval-shaped metal cabin, some kind of terrifying existence was slowly being nurtured. Count, who was crazily chattering on the side, suddenly became silent. Chapter 832. In fact, what Scarlet Count said was not wrong at all, nor was it an exaggeration. Hybrid demon technology was extremely rare and only existed among a few old kings. Dr. Swelling, who was following beside him, was also very self-aware. He just wanted to see the finished product of hybrid demon technology here. He never thought that he would be able to control this technology. However, Dr. Swelling had always been suspicious. The old king's gear, he obtained from the ruins of Stuart, was also a kind of biological machinery. Did it also come from hybrid demon technology? However, there were too many relationships, secrets, and rules between the old kings. Even the doctor who had reached the mature body found it difficult to pry into it. If he wanted to understand the nature of the gear in his brain, he had to talk to the Ghoul King face to face. But no one would have thought Han Dong could actually activate the control panel. Even he himself was surprised. This series of processes were completed by Han Dong when he was immersed in the hybrid demon technology. It was as if the brain automatically drove Han Dong to complete the connection with the experimental equipment. At this time, Han Dong also recalled the words of the old Grey King. I don't know which master copied the head. It seems to be flawed, but it is actually so perfect. Could it be that my head was copied from the head of an old king as a template? Although Count was a little arrogant, it was not exaggerated to the point of lying. I can directly control this technology. Obviously, it is directly related to my head. Interesting. At this time, the oval structure of the gray and black cabin, started by Han Dong, completed the breeding of the experimental body inside. Sizzle! When the cabin opened, a rat man that looked like the Lord of Ramstein suddenly rushed out and tried to tear Han Dong apart. Before Han Dong or Count, who was hanging on his arm, could make a move, a brain infection instantly invaded the rat man's brain. Skull implosion. Wisps of mucus flowed out from the 7 orifices, and the rat man died on the spot. All of this was done by Dr. Swelling. It was also because he found an opportunity to protect Han Dong that the doctor was secretly excited. At least he would not have nightmares tonight. However, compared to this rat man, everyone's attention was on the experimental equipment here. Since Han Dong could control it, it would be better to move this sacrificial room to the mobile land deed. This idea was immediately rejected by Count. The essence of the Scarlet Manor is just a small land deed. It can't accommodate these things at all. Not to mention that you moved many forces to the manor, the load is full. It's impossible to put all these things in. Let's do this. There was no need to take all of them away. He only needed to take the energy source and a separate set of equipment. Once we have mastered the basic technology, we can make all kinds of experimental equipment. Doctor, the task of finding the entire equipment. I will go to the Scarlet Manor. Yes. The moment Han Dong returned to the manor, he connected his brain to the entire manor through the title deed. The difference between the small and the small land deed, the land deed, the small, the large, to the end, the large, to the end, and the end, the small, small, the small, small, the small, small. Based on Han Dong's understanding, there were several levels above the medium-sized land deed. It was impossible to imagine what kind of king city a land deed of that level would correspond to. As Han Dong optimized the manor, he communicated with the Earl beside him. By the way, can the mobile land deed only correspond to a small size? Is there a larger mobile land deed? Are you so greedy? Count's Scarlet Manor is equivalent to a medium-sized land deed. Speak properly and listen to my question clearly. In Han Dong's view of the overall situation, due to the development of experiments in the future, he would have more and more experimental experiences under his command. In addition, as a double emissary, it would be easy to recruit some unorganized hybrid demons to join his manor. At that time, the Scarlet Manor would be insufficient. He would either expand the size of the Scarlet Manor or find a way to obtain a larger mobile land deed. Do you still need to think about it? There must be. Either you directly start a war with a mythical body and seize someone else's mobile land deed, or you devour the same type of land deed. Let's talk about the latter. What do you mean by the same type? Take out the land deed. Seeing that you worked hard to kill the smelly rats, I, Count, will personally guide you. Count's consciousness was only stored in Han Dong's body. The current form was only borrowed from Han Dong's body, so he could control the land deed normally. After a series of operations, the land deed parameters appeared on the back of the parchment, including the air humidity, soil composition, and various other detailed data. Some land deeds cover mountain areas, some cover sea areas, some are set between swamps, and some are set on dry land. There are differences. Land deeds with similar parameters can be classified as the same type. You can increase the size of the main land deed by devouring the same type of land deed. Stuart Manor is basically the same type as mine. Why didn't you say so earlier? Why should I say so earlier? You didn't ask me. Han Dong was too lazy to say anything more. After all, Count was quite useful during the battle. devouring the same type of land deed. Looks like I'll have to work harder this time. After obtaining the hybrid demon technology and learning about the devouring of land deeds, Han Dong made some changes to the plan in his mind. His desire to invade had greatly increased. Following the optimization of the manor, there was more space. Professor Swollen also found a complete set of equipment and moved it to the manor's underground laboratory. He changed it to the best sealed secret room to store it. Han Dong could only control the experimental equipment. He was still far from understanding the technology. Sacrificial room, the follow-up. Han Dong and Professor Swollen into the sacrificial room. They basically confirmed that the original Lord Ramstein's sacrificial activities were as follows: using the atavistic genes as the basic template, using various high-quality rats as larvae, using the hybrid demon technology here to breed rat men and hybrid demons. They would regularly sacrifice to the Lord. To be exact, they would be sent directly to the old king through the teleportation device in the center of the sacrificial room. Transporting hybrid demons. A simple calculation. The equipment here can probably produce hundreds of hybrid demons every month. If the old king controlled hundreds of land deeds, then there would be tens of thousands of hybrid demons joining his army every month. What kind of concept is this? How large was the hybrid demon army under the old king? Han Dong didn't think about it any further. There was no point in thinking about it. He was just secretly laughing. This garbage-picking trip back to Perugia was a great harvest. It might even change Han Dong's future structure. Togu. Destroy this place. Yes. Wherever the chain went, hell's lava would destroy everything. The theft of the hybrid demon technology had to be kept a secret. Chapter 833. In a large swamp dozens of kilometers away from Perugia City. The air here was dyed yellow by the plague. Living fungi grew on the surface of the trees. The mycelium swayed in the air. Fungal monsters with strange postures could be seen everywhere in the bushes. However, compared to the monsters made of fungi, the monsters here were much stronger. There were more shamans in the swamp. They wore antler helmets and looked like humans. The wooden houses they built could be found in the deeper areas. This group of shamans used strange tools to collect fungi in the swamp. Through a unique screening method, they found fungi that met the standard and sent them to the deepest part of the swamp in exchange for the feudal lord's gift. At this moment, a shaman priest with a huge body and the same antlers ran back to the swamp from the outside world. After identifying the shaman through the high-grade antlers on his head, he rushed directly to the deepest part of the maze. He bypassed layers of barriers and followed the one-way path to the core of the maze. The feudal lord of the swamp sat on a giant mushroom seat made of various soft mushrooms. "And Udal, what is it that made you abandon your investigation work and come back to report to me?" "Feudal lord, the rat in Perugia City is dead." "What did you say? Ramsden is dead?" "Even though this fellow is a madman and often feeds on other Yimo, he is still rather cautious and intelligent. His only flaw is that he is unable to suppress his madness. Could it be that he offended someone with an atavism physique that is more powerful than him and was killed instead?" "No, the humans formed a large army to launch a siege against Perugia City in accordance with the rules and successfully killed the rat. Based on their route, it's very likely that they'll pass by here." "Humans? A siege that complies with the rules?" "Since it complies with the rules, the siege index must be lower than the defense index." "How are the casualties on the human side?" "There are basically no casualties. It can be said that they won in a crushing manner." For a moment, the cavern fell into silence. However, the feudal lord sitting on the mushroom seat did not have much of a change in expression. He said calmly, "I've seen the rat. I've met that rat before, and it's not that weak. It must have thought that it was smart enough to play some tricks before the battle and suffered a crazy backlash. Speaking of which, the news of Mouse's death should have spread out immediately. Including me, there are 4 people with atavistic physique around Perugia. They should all feel a sense of danger and be interested in Perugia's land. At that moment, the liege removed a mushroom from his body and handed it to the messenger. And Udal will go to the other 3 regions as an emissary to see what the other 3 lords think. At the same time, bring my thoughts to it. Since everyone could be targeted individually by this group of humans, they might as well gather in advance and launch a surprise attack on this group of humans. With so many uncontaminated and strong human knights, they would be great petri dishes for fungi. We might be able to use their bodies to grow fungus of unimaginable quality. If we sacrifice them to the Lord, we will be able to obtain more blessings and strengthen our swamp. Such a human army was a huge fortune. We must get it. The messenger who received the mushroom showed an excited expression. He seemed to have never received such a gift before. However, he seemed to have thought of some troublesome things and quickly reported, "My liege, the scale of the human army this time is much larger than before. At least I can sense a few abnormally powerful energies. They might be even stronger than you, my liege, close to the mythical level. It doesn't matter, since this group of humans knows how to use the rules. We will also use the rules to play with them. This group of inferior races that hide in the city all year round, do they really understand the rules? It can't be. Alright, hurry up and go." "Yes." And Udal immediately ate the mushroom given by the liege. His overall aura increased wildly, and 2 giant spores grew from his back. Smack! As the juice splashed out, 2 clones that looked exactly like him landed on the ground. Their consciousness connected and rushed to the other 3 territories controlled by the atavistic physique simultaneously to convey their liege's wishes. They corresponded to 1. Through the stone house in the sky, a manor built in a canyon, Venega Shadow Manor. 2. A city built in Lake Trasimeno, Toad City. 3. A green manor built in the Castro Forest based on green plants. Green plants basically did not exist under the Evernight Night. The liege that was originally on the opposite side became a little nervous because of Rat's death. At the same time, they also fell into a state of excitement and temporarily established a deformed cooperation relationship. Each of them also sent messengers to other territories to discuss and conspire. The material search ended. Although Han Dong had special privileges, he was still taken to the Demon King's castle. He talked about what he found during the search and what he took away. Han Dong did not mention anything about the ritual room and the hybrid demon technology. The material search was well done. In another 50 kilometers, we will completely leave the monitoring area of the Holy City and enter the completely unknown Evernight world. The marching speed will be greatly reduced, and at the same time, we will make frequent stops and scout in advance on the way. At the same time, we will raid or patrol some small areas with hidden treasures, or occupy some gold mines to maintain the endless energy. I hope you can actively sign up to participate in various material-related activities at any time. That's it, the whole army is expected to set off in 2 hours. Thank you for your hard work. The simple speech ended. When Han Dong returned to the 4th Legion, everyone was doing basic preparations before the departure. Just as Mia was about to hold on to Han Dong's arm due to her lovesickness, Han Dong suddenly stopped her. In the Legion, a Scarlet Knight wearing a red demon mask suddenly arrived. "Nicholas, after our follow-up examination, we suspect that you have contracted a contagious scurvy during the siege. Please follow me to the military hospital for further examination and treatment." "Huh? Okay." Han Dong reacted quickly and immediately left with the Scarlet Knight. The so-called scurvy was just an excuse. Han Dong had made such a big name in the first battle of the Expeditionary Army. As the general of the 4th Legion, he naturally had to pay more attention to him. Please come in, Commander Shia is waiting for you in the Red Cross Mobile Hospital's director's office. Okay. Chapter 834. Because of the importance of medical support to the Great Expedition, the mechanical god assistants also specially made a portable mobile hospital for Captain Xiaya. The entire structure of the hospital was filled with high-toughness blood vessels. In terms of the hardness and toughness of the building alone, it was not much worse than the sanctum. Dean's office. Captain Xiaya, who was wearing a white coat and crossing her long white legs outside, was curiously staring at Han Dong, who entered the door. There seemed to be a lot of questions in her heart. The Scarlet Knight in charge of leading the way immediately turned into a pool of blood, and the armor was used as an ornament here. The blood flowed into Captain Xiaoya's body. Obviously, it was the blood clone controlled by Captain Xiaoya who went to invite Han Dong over. No one knew that the two of them had a private meeting during the Great Expedition. Nicholas, you're really something. I heard that when the siege army arrived at the main battlefield, the Lord had already been seriously injured and had fallen into madness. I want to ask you personally, was it Knight Charlie or you who drove the atavistic body into madness? Since there was no need to lie, Han Dong told him everything that had happened. Xiaya was not surprised at all, as if it was within her expectations. Haha. I knew that you could resist the atavistic body as a grade 2 knight. If such news reached the ears of others, everyone would have a serious attitude. They would even suspect that when you saw the atavistic body, the other party was already seriously injured for some reason. But I've had a whole hand-to-hand combat experience with you, and I know you're very capable. Captain Xiaoya's tone and words more or less revealed some charm. However, Han Dong only treated it as Captain Xiaoya's style and preferences, and didn't care at all. Captain Xiaya, why are you looking for me? The siege of Perugia was a great victory, and at the same time, it also proved the usability of the world rules. What do you think of this matter? It looks good, but it's actually not very good. Xiaya always felt that chatting with Han Dong was particularly interesting, or rather, Xiaya was very interested in Han Dong, the knight that exceeded common sense. Moreover, Han Dong was one of the few knights who was neither afraid nor pretentious in front of her. Oh, tell me your opinion. Under the restrictions of the world rules, we obtained a crushing victory. This would cause the other lords around Perugia to worry, panic, and anger. In the end, it may lead to the temporary replacement of the antagonistic relationship between them. Seeing that Han Dong had given the correct answer, Xiaya continued. That's right. Although the death of an atavistic physique won't attract the attention of the world, it's still a mystery. However, it's enough to cause the hybrid demons within 100 kilometers of us to fall into a state of panic. The hostility between them might disappear because of this, and they might join forces to deal with us. In the following march, they might be attacked by the hybrid demons. It was hard to predict when, where, and how the attack would take place. This group of lords should not have reached the mythical level. If they attack us according to the world rules, our team leaders will not be able to participate in the battle. Can you predict the movements of these guys in advance? Commander Xiaya really thinks of me as Mr. Black and White. I've never learned astrology. Don't lie to me. Before the siege of Perugia began, you suggested forming an art team. Knowing that there were traps, we went into Perugia ahead of time. The defeat of the Lord of Perugia must have something to do with you. In my opinion, you must have known something before the battle. Something that we don't know. Commander Xiaya's words were full of charm, but she had a sharp eye. Phew. Actually, I wasn't the one who suggested to go into Perugia ahead of time. As for the current situation, I really can't predict the time and place of the attack. However, I might be able to guess how they will attack. What do you mean? The world rules. were jointly created by the old kings. It belongs to the chaotic rules of the hybrid demon world. In their opinion, we humans are still in the exploration stage. Therefore, if they really want to attack us, they will definitely start from this point. In the minds of these lords, there must be a concept: no one knows the rules better than me. You know? A little. According to my guess, they will probably do this. Han Dong told Commander Xiaoya about the surprise attack that he had come up with in his head and added at the end. That's all I can guess. This kind of surprise attack will prevent the expeditionary army from making too many preparations. There is no way to prepare for a spiritual invasion in advance like the siege of Perugia. However, if Commander Xiaoya wants to report this to the higher-ups, please don't say that I came up with this idea. To be honest, I just want to be a salted fish. Han Dong had just finished speaking. Commander Xiaoya, who was sitting on the desk with her legs crossed, stepped on him lightly with one of her jade feet. Her thumb scratched the buttons of his shirt as she said, "I knew you weren't simple. However, I already knew what you said. The secret language unit hidden in the expeditionary army has already given us this information in advance. However, some of the details you mentioned can further improve our response plan." Secret language unit? That's right, there is a lot of information about the hybrid demons recorded on the stone slab. There must be a lot of information about the rules as well. Suddenly, the burning fire in the office dimmed. Did you really think that I wanted to meet you alone to ask about these things? Commander Xiaoya, what's the matter? A delicate hand like that of a child pinched Han Dong's chin, and a leather whip fell beside her. Her dark red eyes stared at Han Dong. You are a knight of the 4th Legion, and also a knight that I have high hopes for. I absolutely forbid you from making such a dangerous decision again. Even if you are confident, you have to report to me in advance. If you dare to do this again, be careful that I will directly restrain you. Okay. Actually, Han Dong wanted to shift the blame to Demps, but he was immediately interrupted. Seeing that your answers were correct just now, it means that you are confident in doing things, so I'll let it go this time. The army has already prepared for the next possible attack. You stay here and rest. Stay here? Currently, the expeditionary army has completely entered the Evernight district, and the marching speed will be greatly reduced. The early stages of the long and boring journey, are you not willing to accompany me? Of course, but I will send someone to explain to your teammates that you have a certain level of blood ability and have been temporarily recruited to assist in the hospital. Okay. However, I also have a small condition. I don't know if Commander Xiaoya can agree to it. That is, if the hybrid demons really launch an attack on our army, I want to participate. Pia. A loud whip sound came from the top floor of the hospital. It scared the doctor who was performing the final sutures in the operating room on the same floor. He accidentally cut the patient's blood vessels. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.